Okay, would it be after 7 o'clock? I call the March 22nd meeting to order, and we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. Start off with the minutes for March 8th.
Yeah, I reviewed these minutes and I move that we approve them as drafted.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Okay, next one is small project, NACC 304, 37 Court Street.
Just pulling it up. Alrighty, the applicant is here this evening, Mr. Weaver. This project entails removal of a failing exterior brick fireplace and chimney, and it is about 98 feet from the wetland. It's not going to be replaced, so the footing will be dug out. So that's the main ground disturbance that will happen, and that footing hole will be loamed and seeded, and that's it. It's
Okay.
very straightforward.
I'll say.
Well, it's gonna be a tricky chimney to take down.
We'll see. I don't know.
Well, you got a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Start at the top.
Bottom's fast.
I'll just hit
I'll
it from
leave-
the bottom and hope for the best.
Yeah.
No, I don't have any questions.
No questions.
No questions. No questions.
So I didn't suggest any erosion controls because it's so far away. Just a post-construction site inspection to verify, finished conditions.
I move that we grant the small project request for 37 Court Street, NACC number 304, under Section L. And I also move it simultaneously that we adopt the recommendations of our administrator.
I second those.
That's post-construction inspection.
All those, your second? Yep.
You got a second down there?
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll get that permit out to you probably early next week.
Okay.
And then you should be good to go. Call me when it's done.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next one is 242-1821, 217 Gray Street.
Alrighty. Commission will recall issuing an order in July of 2021. It governed the demolition of an existing rear enclosed porch, stairs, and deck, and construction of a new addition, new deck and stairs, and a patio. Work at its closest point was 71.6 feet from the BVW. The order was later modified in October to allow for the construction of a 23 by 28 garage to be located 74.14 feet from the BVW. Commission issued a condition that required mowing between wetland flags A10 and A14 to be to cease, and to have wetland markers be installed along that edge. This condition has been and continues to be complied with. Installation of 8 arborvitaes for screening at the side of the garage was approved administratively. outside the 50. The only deviation was a walkway, a couple of walkways, one leading from the patio and then one along the side of the garage. But these are well outside the 50 and fairly small footprint. But it makes sense for, access. Otherwise.
It is within the, excuse me,
It's in the
within the
buffer.
envelope of the other areas that were being worked anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. But otherwise, all other elements of the project are in compliance. And the garage had a ZBA approval. So I just would recommend issuing a full and complete certificate with ongoing conditions as prescribed.
I just have a question. We voted for the garage to be in the 50?
No, it's out of the 50. It's 74 feet, 74 feet from the wetland.
That came in as a modification.
Yep,
That was compliant.
yep.
And there's no issue with the playground before? Was that playground there before?
No, that wasn't an issue before.
That was an issue before?
It was not an issue.
It was not an issue. So it
It's
was there,
on, it's not like it's just on footings. It's not like it doesn't have a,
so it was there before the application?
yes, yes,
It was
yes.
there? Okay, I'm all
Yep.
set. Thank you.
So the playground's not a permanent structure?
No,
Okay, and does the as-built accurately reflect what's in the field?
it does, it does.
I
I
have no
went
more
out there
questions.
and pasted off and, compared to the approved plan and.
Well, then I have no questions if you paced it off.
So I'm noticing this recommendation is coming from Taylor Andrews. I want to acknowledge that today was his last day at work. He did a fabulous job for us, and I have no reason not to believe his recommendation. So I would certainly support this,
Yep,
and we're going to miss him.
yep. We'll miss him.
I told him he could keep his Kevlar vest that we bought him.
But
All right, no more questions? Can we have a motion?
Move that we grant the COC for 217 Gray Street, 242-1821.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Next one is, this, oh my God, it's on 2 digits, that was a typo. 242628. Partial COC for 64 Meadowwood.
order was issued in November of 1992 for a 40B, and it governed construction of an 18-lot subdivision and associated house lots. The order called out a 25-foot no disturb zone and a 30-foot no build reduction due to the 40B. The rear porch was a deck and was built with the house and enclosed in 2001 and approved via building permit with conservation sign-off. The side deck has been in existence at least since 2005. And the property has changed 5 times since it's been built, but otherwise, the site's stable, and there really is no evidence of any kind of wetland violations, which is surprising, but, so. I mean, I think overall, I don't have huge issues.
Okay, Ryan?
So it's just a small portion of the stairs that's within the 25-foot? Is that
Right.
right? And everything else is,
Yep, and then just a small corner of that side deck that's off to the side of the driveway, but it's, the deck, the rear structure's been there since 2001. And, but actually, no, before 2001. The deck was there with the house when it was built, and then just enclosed. So they applied for its enclosure, and it was approved by staff
I see.
at that point.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. No more questions?
No?
No, I understand.
I'm in the same vote. Jack?
Was this the original delineation from the
Yes.
years ago?
Yes, it's not, yeah,
Okay, so
yep.
yeah, I guess I have no questions. It looks like it violates the zones.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Other than that, I mean, it is what it is.
So this is the COC for the original build of it, correct?
No,
Partial.
it's a
Right, right,
partial.
but it's a partial for the original build of the
Yes.
the development of the property. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, so it's got to.
The engineer is here, if you have
it's got
questions
issues.
for him.
Sure. I don't have any questions, but
No, I get it.
I
I know.
know my position.
Yeah, I'm going to go down the same line, I think was where Sean was going too. 2001, when they enclosed the porch, is that something that should have come to commission rather than dealt with administratively, or?
Possibly, probably. The note on the building permit said no additional excavation required, enclosing of existing deck only. That's what it said.
Back in that era, we were worried about our administration. I think we still are today. But nonetheless, he signed, no, 2001, there was stuff that was happening at the desk that
Yeah,
should
we
have.
were talking about the 2001
You said
part.
you still
Is that
are.
we still are today?
There was still,
You swing into the
there's still
still
stuff
worried-
that's still
he's-
coming back. to
He's
haunt
still
us.
worried about
yes.
2001.
Still stuff that's coming back to haunt us.
I thought it sounded like our
Sir,
original.
But
I can take it. I
nonetheless,
can
in good
take
And it
faith,
hasn't gotten any better.
nonetheless, in good faith, the applicant did what they did and got a sign off. So leave it at that. It's on us. I think the bigger question here is the original order conditions, going back before that 2001, still has not received a full certificate of compliance. What's up with that? That's the bigger question here. We've got one of the, probably the most controversial 40Bs that came before us in this era, and it's still not in compliance as a full order of conditions. I think we should put somebody on notice and say that it's about time you come into compliance. Your order's expired. It's expired by 20 years, and you should probably get full compliance so these people don't individually have to deal with it. I think it's high time the developer deal with that.
Are we holding a bond for that?
Probably.
This site's been out of compliance since the day it was built.
Just that they broke ground.
Since the day it was built, it's been out of compliance. And there's been all kinds of things going on, unpermitted work that leads to waivers, that leads to partial COCs.
So we have the engineer in the room tonight. We should ask him, what's the status of full compliance?
Well, you can
I think it's a
ask.
fair question.
We can ask him, I'm certain he'll have an interesting answer for us, Mr. Sapinski.
This wasn't actually a 40B. It was actually a...
Cluster zone?
It was not cluster, it was a special zone that had been created. All the neighbors, people that own land up in that area, all got together and petitioned the planning board to create this zone with 5,000, I think it was 5,000 square foot lots, right? And reduced frontage. And they went to the planning board and sort of worked it through, and they went to town meeting and they approved it. So you have that section of 114 to 125 in the triangular area behind Chestnut Green that got rezoned this special zone. It's the only zone in the town that had those lotting requirements, so it really wasn't a 40B.
I think it had, my recollection, it's going way back, it was a 40B. It was the only way to get around our bylaw.
No, they went to the town and got a rezoning.
You couldn't have gone around the no build, no disturb, which you
They
did.
didn't.
I think they did.
They did.
No, they
They went to the commission voted it because of the the high density, low lot sizing bylaw that got approved at town meeting. So the commission went ahead and approved it with a 25 and a 30 and
That was
a
at the
50.
time, the town put together a blue ribbon commission to study the zoning and rezone certain areas of the town. At the same time that this zone was created for this thing, out where I live, they took us up to 2-acre zoning. And Mike Smolak, well, everybody that had large parcels of land got subjected to 2-acre zoning, and in the cluster area, this was like a mongrel between a PRD and a 40B.
Right.
And that's really what it is. And Steve's right. There were a lot of concessions made to accommodate the 5,000 square foot lots,
Okay.
including 114, Route 125 got modified. A special queuing lane was created. There was a lot going on.
And in terms of what happened, the developer did the as-built roadway plans, and there was never any real requirement for him to come in with a certificate of compliance on the lots. He submitted that for the roadway, where it was within 100 feet of the wetlands, but not the lots. And why, I don't know why, and you had 3 different builders out there dealing with these subdivisions. And there were a group of neighbors that tried to get together, but they couldn't get everybody to kick in the money to do it, so they just said, forget it, we'll just do it on an individual basis, and that's what they did. That's what they've been doing. And I think there might only be 1 or 2 or more lots under this particular order that don't have COCs. Maybe it's only 1 left. And it tends to be when they sell and the attorneys, the title insurance company for the new buyer says, you've got this outstanding order that was never closed. You've got to go ahead and get it closed. And that's when it happens.
So it took 5 prior sales for that threshold to be reached by the attorney this time around?
Well, there are some people that are original buyers that are still living there.
Yeah, but in this particular instance, it's sold 5 times
Yeah,
and not picked up, but now it is.
right. Now, the title companies now are considering it a Florida title. I think
Oh,
before
it is?
that. Yeah.
And it should have been 4 times ago.
Yeah, and I think before that, it wasn't always the case, but I think now it's pretty much always the case.
Okay, I got enough. I still think we should explore the status of the overall order conditions, whether it's been certificate of compliance issued or not, put them on notice and seize the bond.
What we should do first is we should learn if we're holding any bond money on this project. I doubt that we are.
Why would we not?
I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
worth
will-
doing the research.
I'm willing
worth doing
to
the
bet,
research.
I'm willing to bet we don't have a nickel on this project. And if we did, we'd have something to do, we'd have some way to get some compliance.
I'd be curious to know that answer.
20,000?
20.
Then we can get it by the mailboxes for 20 grand.
So I recommend that, knowing the overall status of the subdivision is now 22 years.
We should take the $20,000 and do the roadway improvements ourselves. That's what we should do.
Roadway certificate of compliance?
Yep, we should take the $20,000 and
Well,
do
we
it
should
ourselves.
explore that. Let's see what the recommendation comes back in the future.
Because I'll
but
tell you, whoever's name is on that bond, for 20 grand, they're gonna walk away from it.
It's not worth it to them. They're down south.
Is the bond,
If you're serious about it, that's the only way we're gonna get it done.
is the bond for the whole project or just
Yeah.
for the roadway?
It's the roadway. It's the
No,
roadway.
and the houses, she's saying, the lots too.
No, the bond we hold is for wetlands, for our order conditions. There may be a separate bond for the roadway. I'm not talking about
No,
that,
I'm talking
that's a
about-
planning
I'm
board
talking about
issue.
the conservation
That's
bond.
we're talking about our own conservation board. Whatever it takes to spend that money towards compliance, whether it's an as-built or whatever, just let's explore our alternatives and put them on notice.
I'm just pretty confident that's the only way we're gonna get it. You can ask Steve, he might give you the same answer.
I would say that.
Yeah.
Steve, did you say that they have an as-built plan for the roadway in place?
There's an as-built plan for the roadway, and I think it went to planning and DPW, but I don't think it ever came to conservation per se. But there is an as-built plan. I have a copy of it. But I got a copy with me.
Mr. Chair, can I ask Amy a couple of questions so I can understand things a little better?
What's that?
Can I ask Amy some questions?
All right.
All right, thanks.
Inquire.
All right, so Amy, if I get this right, so 1992, they come in to get these order of conditions, they build the house. When they build the house, the stairs are within 25 feet of the wetlands, correct? Most likely, as far as we know. And the side deck isn't there yet, or is it?
That, I don't think so. Not at that
And
time.
is part of the side deck in the 25?
No,
No.
it is in 30.
Okay. And is it just pavers on the ground?
Pavers for what?
The decking, is it a real deck, wood deck?
Oh, it's a wood deck
Okay.
on sonotube footings.
Yep, and it's within the 30.
Lower the ground.
Yeah,
So it's within the 30, so those would be 2 violations, correct?
right.
Okay, and then they come in with a request to do something. It was to enclose the porch, 2001.
Yes.
And as an administrator, you would go out there and you would look at that project, but would you stop pulling a tape on stairs and decking when you're just checking out the,
Well, I probably would have said, I don't think the original plan called for a deck.
okay, yep, if the deck, well, the deck
In
wasn't.
fact, the original plan had no decks on it.
Had no deck.
No, every house that was built in 1992, there were no decks
Yeah.
on any of the houses at all, because we told the then builder we wouldn't permit
But
any
you-
decks.
But you didn't go out there in 2005, you went out there in 2001 for the enclosed porch, right?
Well, I can't.
Not you, but.
No, I can't even say that the then administrator went out there.
Well, I'm not asking that, but I'm just saying, would a reasonable administrator, when they go out to look at an enclosed porch, start pulling a tape on the stairs, because the deck's not there yet, the deck's not there till 2005.
No, the
No.
rear deck off the rear of the house
Yeah?
was most likely built with the house.
Okay, I was talking about
Okay,
the side
The
deck.
side deck, okay. Side deck, no, there's no permit, there's no building permit that I could find for the side deck.
Is any of that inside, is that what's inside the
That
30?
is inside the 30.
Yep,
A
okay.
corner of it is inside the 30.
So we weren't put on notice of that at all?
No.
Well, I think, if I could interrupt, Mr. Chairman, just in terms of that issue with the deck, I think the then conservation administrator okayed decks off the back of the houses as long as they were not on grade in the wetlands. So you could have, in her opinion, it was okay to have decks be aerial, right, as long as they weren't on grade. So if they were hung on the house and there were no,
Cantilevered or whatever.
they were cantilevered,
Yeah.
or there was like a knee brace and not a vertical support in the wetlands, then that would be allowed, because it wasn't in the wetlands, it was aerial.
So this is cantilevered?
So I think, although the plans didn't
Where
show,
are you going with that?
the plans didn't show the decks on the back, I think she signed off on allowing the decks with those conditions. And you'll see that, where the deck might be on the face of the retaining wall, or the stone wall, which was supposed to be the limit of work, if the deck went to that point, the knee brace would be back from it, so there was no vertical support. That's when they put in the knee braces.
So were both the rear deck and the side deck elevated?
The side deck is in almost, the one over by the driveway?
Yes.
That's an almost on grade.
Yep, and that's the
Thing.
one, but that's the one that's in the 30, from what I'm hearing.
Right, that was, I don't know where that came from.
Right, so you got something built in 2005 that we didn't get a permit on, that's in the 30s. The stairs were built within 25, and I'm not saying one of our administrators should have noticed that it's, 2 feet within the wetland, so I say no fault on her. So, I don't have any other questions.
spoken.
Yeah, because, your
Well,
packet.
what I'm wrestling with, and thank you, Sean, for kind of putting that in order for me. What I'm wrestling with is this particular homeowner has no responsibility for any prior non-compliance or prior
Fifth homeowner.
inaction of the commissioner or its administrator. The reality is that the house is non-compliant. And at many points along the line, that should have been pointed out, and it wasn't. So there's probably prior homeowners who are responsible for all that. So we're wrestling with, how do you issue a partial compliance for something that's not compliant regardless of responsibility? That's what,
You have them move it. That's how you do it. I mean, this is what we do. We sit here and we tell people they can't go 25, they can't go within the 50. And here we have something that's not, within the buffer zone or outside of those buffer zones. And I don't think that our administrator did anything wrong by going out there to look at an enclosed deck and not pull the tape to see the stairs. Because at that time, that was the only thing not in compliance. That the stairs were 2 feet into the 25. And then in 2005, to have that deck built on the side that's within 30 feet, it's just a clear violation. It's got nothing to do with anything that happened earlier. I don't even know what we're grasping with, we're grappling with here.
it's non-compliant.
I mean, if I'm missing something, please point it out to me. That's why I wanted to ask you a bunch of questions.
That's all right.
You're not.
And there's no excuse, I guess, of the other, I'm not hearing an excuse or justification to not give the partial. I mean, the fact that these homes turned over 5 times in such a small period of time, I mean, we expect that. We try to plan for that with what we do. I can't believe that somebody sold houses and bought them without getting this PCOC 4 transfers ago.
All right, so we have two options. We can deny it,
Well, I can.
or we can continue it.
I'll move that we deny it.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Deny it. Thank you.
Good discussion.
I'm just trying to know where it was.
Okay, NOI. 104, 242, 1866, 104 Bonnie Lane.
This is Bonnie Lane, right? So this order is for the construction of a 20 by 36 in-ground pool, associated pervious paver patio, a 2-foot-high landscape wall, fencing, removal of 6 trees, 3 are in the outer reaches of the buffer zone and the rest are outside, a 1,000-gallon dry well to receive end-of-season pool drawdown, and removing a section of fencing from within the 25 and also on a neighbor's property, and renaturalizing the area that is being disturbed now by the fence allowing for yard to be maintained in that area. So they're going to reseed and allow to naturalize. This project has gone through ZBA approval and watershed special permit process with the planning board. The planning board had a third-party peer review by Horsley Witten and reviewed stormwater, which is basically the proposed pervious paver patio is a stormwater feature for infiltration. The wetland is a BVW, and it was investigated at the planning board's request, and it is connected ultimately to the lake through a series of pipes, so it's not isolated. The paver patio has an operation and maintenance plan. Our field inspector reviewed the wetland delineation and found it to be accurate. The pool itself is going to be 56.7 feet from the BBW, and the patio is just outside the 50. Project engineer and applicant are here this evening with us, and that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Brian, any questions?
Yeah, so access is gonna be on which side of the house? On the left side of the house?
The lower, the right side of the house, so you can see along, front like almost parallel with Bonnie Lane, and then going around the right side of the house.
So,
That arrowed line there, yes. So away from the BBW.
Okay, gotcha. I have no other questions.
The distance from the dry well to the nearest wetland flag, I don't see it called out.
It's just over 100, it's just outside the 100-foot buffer.
It's outside the 100.
Buffer is that thicker dash line.
I see it. Okay, I'm good. All set. Thank you.
The stockpile is, are you planning on using it?
I think the project is most likely going to require the trucking material off-site as it goes. There may be momentary stockpiles on site, so we do have that stockpile shown on the site. As you can see, it's kind of a tight site with some steep topography, so that's a level area that we can lay down temporary stockpiles.
Because once you put it back there, it's going to stay unless you get it out quickly.
Yeah, no, you don't want to put the pool in first.
Yeah. Okay, I'm all set.
Yeah, my question's about the 1,000-gallon dry well. How many gallons will be discharged to that dry well during the pool drawdown?
I don't have an exact gallonage for the drawdown. I believe the total drawdown will be greater than 1,000 gallons. So the way the dry well will work is the water will be pumped into the dry well. It'll be allowed to infiltrate into the ground, and then the pumping will continue after the dry well is the water in the dry well has recharged into the ground.
So you fill up the dry well and you wait for it to empty and you fill it up again?
I think that will be the process seasonally. So when it's shut down for the season, it will be pumped into the dry well until the dry well is at capacity. It will draw down, or it will recharge, and then the process will be done once or twice.
That doesn't sound very practical, I mean, frankly. Where it's outside the 100-foot zone, you know, that's definitely a positive for the case, for the application. But it doesn't seem like anyone who's emptying a pool is going to do that, or even know to do that. It says in the pool drawdown and maintenance procedure, the pool water shall be dechlorinated per state municipal requirements. Do you know what that is? Do you know what that process is?
So the maintenance company that will be doing the drawdown, I'm sure will know that. And essentially what they're going to do is stop chlorinating the water for a certain period of time before they draw down. But whether it's 1 week or 1 month, I do not know the answer to that specifically. If the commission wants additional language added to the operation maintenance, we could certainly do that as well.
It just seems like there's a lot of potential for contaminated water to pollute the site, to put it frankly. And you know, I'm grappling with what that means for the 1,000-gallon tank to be outside of the you know, the jurisdictional area for our commission. Would the applicant consider making that a cartridge-style filter, which is typically what we require for in-ground pools like this? They would not require a drawdown, just changing of the cartridge. So that's been a practice that we've gained confidence in, And I don't see a whole lot on how this is going to be done properly, you know, when the time comes, okay? You know, on the proposed 1,000-gallon dry well tank. So those are my thoughts. Do you have any responses at this point?
Yeah, just a clarifying question on the cartridge. Does that then negate the need for the 1,000-gallon dry well?
Yes.
Is that what you're stating?
Yeah.
Quiet, guy.
No?
They need to draw, they need to empty the pool out. That's
Well,
what the
but-
dry well
It's not
is.
empty, it's drawn down for
Yeah,
coverage.
you
Just
draw
for
it down,
coverage.
I think, just below.
Otherwise, you're gonna have a spreader over the
You're
lawn.
drawing down
It's
like
gonna
4
migrate
inches.
into the lake.
Below the
You
skin.
Gotta have that.
That's right. It's not a full drawdown of the pool to empty, it's a
Right.
drawdown of
Right.
4 to 6 inches below the.
How many gallons is the pool? 8 or 10,000?
About 23,000 gallons
Yeah.
total volume.
Note
20
number
20 by
9,
36.
in their NOI, or in the package, note number 9 describes the methodology for pumping out the pool at the end of the season. There's some comments back and forth. And at the end of the comment, the applicant has revised the O&M plan and added a dry well outside of the 100-foot. Prior to that, there was some conversation about allowing it to recharge over the lawn. And I think somebody objected to that at the Horsley and Witten. And anyway, I think when you read that, you'll see I think the dry well is not negotiable.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that. Thank you, Al. Oh, here it is.
Yeah, at comment 9, there's two answers, but it sheds the most light on it.
And Jack, our cartridge, requirement for cartridge.
All the cartridge would do is, when you backwash the filter, normally the filter gets backwashed daily or every other day. And that water is gonna have to either go to the dry well, or it's not, what we don't want is for that to migrate to the lake. So I think the dry well is your key to operation, your operation and maintenance plan. I think that's really a key element of it.
Okay.
So if you had a cartridge, you wouldn't have to backwash the filter into the dry well, you could just change the cartridge out.
Okay.
That's the advantage to it.
Yeah, no, that's clear then. So as I understand it, then you're just adding the cartridge approach on top of the dry well, and certainly
It'll
open to
make your
that.
daily maintenance a little easier. You're just
Yep.
gonna be spending money on cartridges, but you won't be worrying about a spreader heading down across the lawn to the lake.
Okay.
And you won't need a sand filter or a
Yeah.
DE filter.
Right.
You'll need the filter
Just
cartridge.
something to think about.
No, it's not something was required.
Yeah,
Well, are we requiring a cartridge?
Well, yeah.
we always do.
Okay, sorry, I apologize. I
That's
thought
all
it
right,
was
but-
just a suggestion.
No, we require it,
Okay,
because it
Understood.
avoids
Okay.
the backwash.
I missed that one. I wasn't paying attention.
We both learned something.
Yeah, all pools are, cartridge filters are required.
Okay.
That clarifies
Jack
it.
proposed that a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time.
And regardless of wetlands, I mean, most pools are cartridge anyways,
We
right?
do that, we require all
No,
cartridge filters.
not all.
No?
I have a
No, you get
DE.
town
You have a,
Yeah, but not-
but it's either one or the other,
Not
right?
elsewhere, yeah.
Well, yeah, you have a choice, but,
Sand filters,
Those are old, those are the 70s vintage.
Yeah, cartridge is the way to go.
that's
Sorry.
what
No.
I remember best.
I inherited it.
I'm all set.
I don't have any questions.
Actually, I'm gonna go in the opposite track. I think it's high time we actually see a wet well for dewatering. It happens everywhere, we never talk about it. These guys are coming in with something that's actually
That's great.
an advantage to us. And, you know, if we're looking at, 20 by 36 pool, we're drawing down 4 inches, we're looking at like 1,500, 1,700 gallons of drawdown at the end of the season. At the end of the season, you just simply stop adding chlorine. You pull your residual chlorine down, and you put it into the dry well. It's better than we have ever gotten with any other pool anywhere. So I think it's a really good operation, and it's good design. Cartridge is the way to go, but how they draw it down at the end of the season is something we probably should move forward and make a requirement for all other pools coming in. So I don't think we should be penalizing or tripping up on the fact of putting a dry well, and it's the first time we actually see something that's really good here. So, yeah, I appreciate that. The situation here, though, is to pull it down 4 inches, you're pulling like 1,500 gallons out, you get a 1,000-gallon wet well. You either gotta do it slowly or do it in 2 phases as it draws down. That's where you gotta be careful of. You're far enough away it's not gonna be a problem with the wetland. What it's gonna do is, it's gonna be over capacity of your dry well, it'll
Yeah.
just overtop and spill over. That's what you have to be careful of, and I'm all set.
Okay. Your recommendation, Amy, is, if you have any questions to continue, or if we don't vote on it, correct?
Yep.
Do we, do
I just-
you have any questions on that?
I just have one question. I just want to make sure there is, that dark, thick line is erosion control along the access route, between the access route and the roadway, right?
Correct.
That heavy dash line?
Yes.
The
that is
heavy,
a-
thick,
that's
okay,
a-
I just want to make sure that's what I was looking for. Yep.
Yeah, it's labeled straw wattle.
Oh, here it is. Okay, thanks.
Right? So, if nobody has
I
any
don't
more
know if there's any
questions for
abutters.
continuance.
Motion to close?
No, I don't know if there's any abutters.
Oh, are there any butters to this project? Doesn't appear to be.
Okay. No abutters.
Then, Mr. Chairman, I move that we close the hearing for 1845 Turnpike Street, 242, 1865, and that we render a decision 21 days?
21 days.
You said Turnpike Street, you mean Body Lane?
Yes, Bonnie Lane, sorry, I get the wrong
That's
one.
close enough.
Okay.
I already put it down here.
It's in town.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. You're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one, 242, 1865, 1845 Turnpike Street.
Alrighty, all right. So this NOI comes from the applicant, who is the original owner of the house, who purchased it from Pulte Homes. Proposal entails an irregular shaped addition and associated roof infiltration dry well. The irregular shape is driven by staying outside of the 50-foot no build. The existing rear deck and stairs will be replaced in the same footprints, and the deck will be converted to a four-season room. The deck was built at the time that the house was built and was in compliance at that time. A waiver request has been submitted to allow access within the 25 to the work area in the rear, for the rear deck, and within the 50-foot no build to access the area around the front of the house for the proposed addition. The front steps will be removed to accommodate construction equipment and then replaced when the work is completed. The addition is slated to be supported by a slab on grade with a 5.5-foot frost wall. No grading is proposed. The wetland delineation is accurate, aside from staff moving wetland flag 3A up gradient a bit, but that didn't impact the addition or anything else, just sort of, you know, getting it accurate along the driveway. A small plastic shed has been installed at the end of the driveway on a concrete pad bordered by landscape timbers, and that is in the 25. You can see. I alerted the applicant and their engineer that the shed's going to have to go and the pad will have to go. The engineer went ahead and placed a notation on the plan to that effect. Engineer's here this evening, if you have any questions for him. The commission may want the shed moved before continuing its review, but
Thank
I
you.
know that's usually what you guys do.
Yeah, I guess in terms of the shed, I would be okay with conditioning it being moved, especially since it's shown as that being proposed on the plan. That's just my take on that. So how will the material actually get back to the back of the house? Because this is a pretty narrow area between the erosion controls and the house. So
Right.
like it doesn't look like you can get a truck through there. There's steps and
Right, so they're not going to pour the foundation in place. They're going to build it out of block, the frost wall. So there'll be a lot of lugging. That's what they're planning on. I did have a discussion with them that if they did decide to pour the frost wall in place for the addition, they'd have to wheelbarrow the concrete, or they'd have to get a pumper to literally pump it over there, which I don't think they're gonna do. I think they're gonna just build it out of block.
Okay.
In terms of digging it, it's literally it's 4 feet deep. They'll use a bobcat for that, or dig it by hand. We had that discussion as well. So
Yeah,
they're aware of the constraints.
Yeah, I mean, if what's shown here is the extent of, the proposed limit of work, then
Right.
that's gonna have to be adhered to.
Yeah.
And I just see that being really a big problem.
Right.
And I just,
I had the discussions with them, with their architect. The architect designed the addition to fit, the setbacks clearly, and I think the owner's an artist, and she wants the studio, and that's really what this is. This is gonna be a small studio for her to paint in. I think that's what it is. The enclosure of the deck, I think that's just to give them sort of a mudroom coming in from the outside, so they could do something else inside the building where that might exist now.
yeah, I think I foresee it being an issue, and if there's a way we could head it off at the pass, as opposed to having it come in,
Right.
there's wheelbarrows going down by the wetland, like,
Right.
I don't know if the commission would be amenable to some temporary workspace within the 25 on existing lawn or something like that, but I don't see how, the distance between the bottom of the steps and the edge of the erosion controls is like 5 feet. And you're carrying, I just don't see how this is gonna.
Right, I told them
Yeah.
they'd have to remove the steps and replace them, or they're gonna have to ramp up over them.
Okay.
And that's what they agreed to do.
I guess at the end of the day, as long as everybody understands the
They-
constraints and what the limits are.
I
then
can tell you,
okay, but
I
that's.
went through it with them and emails, and they fully understand it. They know.
Okay. Yeah, everything else is meeting the setbacks of the
Yeah.
50-foot and movement of the shed. So I'm okay with those two things. It's just the access that I foresee some potential issues. So that's all I have.
So just keeping on access, so we have an access to the back of the house for the deck work,
Right.
and that should only entail
Lumber.
manual labor, right?
Right.
Are the footings need to be replaced?
The footings are gonna be dug by hand. They're gonna replace some of the existing footings with deeper sonotubes, but that's gonna be dug by hand
By hand.
and mixed and poured by hand.
So that's like foot, it's by foot and hand
Right.
for the rear deck.
Yep.
The worry, yeah,
For access. So
Right.
That side, it's much easier. to get around,
right.
but
But the
other
access for
side.
the addition is another story.
Yeah.
So that's the basis of the waiver request,
Yeah,
to allow access?
to allow access.
Yeah. And it's a temporary disturbance?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm all set with that. Okay, thank you.
I know you're saying the homeowner's agreeable to this, but is the contractor agreeable to this when you tell him he's got a wheel? Concrete over stairs into the footing? He'll do it once and he'll go home.
I'm telling you, I made it very, very clear, like, I'm gonna say if there wasn't 3 emails, there were 5 emails, and I told them their architect and their contractor, and that's what they all agreed on, so.
Well, when we do the pre-construction, Amy, there's gonna be certain guidelines that you're gonna have to enforce on them,
Yeah.
what they're gonna do, because that's pretty nasty.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically I mean,
Yeah.
the house
I
is
mean-
up on a little island, and
The,
then,
the block foundation makes sense, it's still gonna be rough doing the footing by hand, but, you know, and the digging,
Yeah,
it-
that's-
and digging it out, and
very
getting it out of there.
labor
Someone's
intensive.
gonna get a lot of exercise. Yeah, he's gonna
They
get,
have arms like tree trunks when
gonna
they
get some hard workers in there, that's all. They'll get it done.
Well, I mean, Steve did say that it's either, it's a small bobcat to dig it.
Yeah, small.
So manual labor for the deck on the back, and then through the front of the house to the proposed addition, he is talking about a bobcat
They ain't gonna be able to
to
do
do
it.
that digging.
You're a small bobcats.
Okay,
Well,
I'm just
based
saying,
on-
it's not
based
gonna be
on-
manual. I'm not expecting manual labor for the addition, that's all I'm saying.
Based on
I don't know what you guys
my
are expecting.
experience of land, Bonnie Lane's pretty bony.
This is turnpike,
Big,
Turnpike.
big glacial moraine.
This is Turnpike Street.
it's a turnpike.
Turnpike.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the
Moraine
wrong
up there,
thing,
too, though.
I'm sorry. Even Turnpike,
Big boulders.
big boulders and wetlands. Whatever, that's their issue. That shed, the plastic shed, it says, to be moved and reset. Where's it going?
Off the side of the new addition.
Oh, there wasn't,
Yep, it's
oh,
shown.
I thought that was another one.
Relocated shed.
Okay. All right.
Okay, it's over the
Driveway.
I do
infiltration
s-
system, it looks like.
To be
Yeah.
placed on like blocks.
Yeah, it's on top of the septic
Yeah.
tank.
Yeah, it's,
All right, that's the only question I have. But like I said, we're gonna be watching that very closely. Thank you.
So, Steve, is the work sequence, are you planning to stay within the erosion control at all times?
Yes,
Okay,
yep.
so it looks like you've got more space on the front of the house, less space on the back where you're proposing the enclosed building on the back of the house. So you won't be running that bobcat back along that rear deck, is that right?
On the right-hand side, the rear deck, no, they won't need a bobcat there. That can all be done by hand.
Okay, and then the bobcat goes in the front, inside the erosion control.
Right.
So just to understand this waiver request, the temporary encroachment into the no disturb zone is on the shed side of the house, or along the rear, and that's across lawn?
yep.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I have no more questions.
I don't have any questions.
So in 2001, the deck was compliant with the 50-foot no-build zone. So is the line moved? So if the line is moved from 2001 on an open deck that was compliant, and closing that deck now that's with a line that's closer, is that not a waiver? I think it is. I'm not sure the deck can be enclosed without a waiver. It's closer by some 15 feet because of the move of the line. So it originally compliant as an open deck, which is why it was approved. But to enclose it now at 35 feet requires a waiver. So the deck has, enclosing the deck requires a waiver. We have to consider that. The
Okay.
original property owner is the same as the applicant
As the
now, from what I read here. So we already have a history of noncompliance with that shed being built contrary to the original approval. And I think, holding them to a very strict standard makes sense. Because we already have a history of noncompliance out here. I hear things about architects and Steve talking with the owner and everybody knowing what the requirements are. When they get out there, they turn that first shovel, I really believe this is an invitation for noncompliance. I just don't see how the hell you build that addition in that corner around all these constraints and make it work. I just don't see enough comfort level, it just doesn't work. You can say, you got 3, 4, 5 emails, it doesn't matter. They turn shovel out here, there's no way you're gonna get the material out of there and out front in that tidy area, short of disturbing that front stairway, which is what's gonna have to happen. I still don't see how that happens. And I say that in the context of that, we already have a track record of non-compliance out here. I think they just want a permit from us to do the best they can to get their addition. And if there's a violation, well, they'll deal with it later. That's what I see. I don't think this is approval, and that's my position on that.
Just, concerning the access there, I know sometimes we have monitors go out on sites when at certain times of projects.
Yep.
Could you have a monitor there during certain times of this project? Not somebody from us, but, somebody that the applicant hires to be there to watch it take place to make sure that they're not bringing heavy equipment back there. Is that a reasonable condition?
It's a reasonable request.
Is that something everybody thinks is an okay idea?
If somebody's watching, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I like the idea.
So the can of worms, in my opinion, is the enclosing the deck with a line that's moved. What was compliant for a deck that was allowed, built accordingly, the line is moved and now they're looking to enclose it. Does that not make it a change of a structure requiring a waiver? I think it does.
Well, the line moved.
Right, but I think what Joe would be saying is this is not an in-kind replacement of the deck that sits there. It's an
I see what you're
improvement
saying, yeah.
to that. I didn't think of that, but.
Well,
Interesting.
can I just mention something? I didn't use the old line here. I
No,
went
I
out
know.
and I said to the owner, I said, look, it's been so many years since that old line was done, and even though you had an order of conditions and you permitted this, we should get a botanist to reflag it, we should resurvey it, and, live with whatever
Right.
the new line is, because under the old delineation, they could have actually have built a much larger addition, and that's what really they were going to do. But I said to them, you're gonna have to live within, what is the wetland line currently. And so they agreed and got a botanist to go out, et cetera, et cetera. And when it came to the deck and the setback, I think I did have a discussion, I would say, maybe, that, because it is existing and decks are considered a structure under the North Andover zoning bylaw. A structure's a structure. A deck, because it's attached to the building, is considered a structure in North Andover. So, as a result, it's an existing structure that is currently existing, that was currently compliant, because when it was permitted, it was compliant. And enclosing it doesn't change it as a structure, it changes the type of structure from a deck to an enclosed porch, but it's still a structure in the exact same place that the structure existed when the wetlands were originally delineated and this building was originally permitted. But if this was another town and the deck wouldn't be considered a structure, like there are other towns that don't consider deck structures, nothing of it does, I would say I could never make that argument, and I would say, okay, I agree with Joe. But here I'm going to disagree with Joe because, with all due respect, because I think it was a structure and it still is a structure, and it's not being changed as a structure, it's being changed as a type, but structure is structure. I guess that's what I would say. I'm doing my best here to,
So if we go up 20 stories high, is it still a structure without?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
that's a
the
pretty
type
bad.
of structure.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But,
That's
but,
not the case.
you don't allow 20 stories, so it's not even a discussion.
Whatever it is.
Anyway.
Underneath the existing deck
Right.
is impervious area, and underneath the proposed enclosed deck, will also be impervious.
I would have requested a waiver if that was the case. So that's, I had it, we had discussions about it. I didn't think it would require the waiver. I would have requested it. That's, I guess, what I would say.
So the existing deck itself will remain, it's not a tear down?
Right, the existing deck's gonna remain.
Okay.
In any
It's
case.
just new footings that are needed?
Right.
And then build over it?
Yep. Yep.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and agree with Steve this time. This is a rare day.
As long as they're not improving anything underneath that, I would agree too.
Right.
If that's staying open like it is now, or if they enclose the deck above,
Right,
then it's replacement within the footprint.
right.
That's what I'm thinking.
What's the bylaw actually, what's the language of the bylaw though? Like I get what you're saying, though, like, and forgive my ignorance, I'm still getting up to speed on some of the.
While she's looking that up, I don't see any notes on the plan about the section of driveway that leads to the shed, the shed and pad to be removed. Is that section of driveway proposed to be returned to lawn as part of this
No, the
application?
driveway, the paved driveway will remain paved driveway. The shed will be removed, and there's a concrete pad that's underneath it.
Yep.
And that's gonna be removed,
Yep.
and that's gonna be turned to loam and seed.
Yep.
The driveway there was no, the shed is what was not
So you're
permitted.
not proposing to remove
the
the,
regs?
Any of the driveway, no.
you probably should. It's within the no disturb zone. And basically, it's the same criteria that applies to the shed and the pad.
I think when it was built, it wasn't in the no disturb zone.
Right, because it moved like 15 feet.
Right, because the line was 15 feet over.
It was probably placed right on the edge of it.
Right,
when it-
right.
It
The shed was built, or the shed was brought in at some point after the driveway and the house was done. I don't know
Yeah, I
when.
think it appeared in like 2020 or 2021.
Right, so
It
that's
hasn't-
new.
It's not an ancient thing, it's fairly new.
The driveway's always been there since the house was built.
Yeah,
Okay.
Is that what our aerial
yeah, that's what I
pictures
found.
show, that driveway juts
The
out?
driveway has always been that way.
Probably needed for turnaround, to turn around.
Yeah,
Probably,
so-
right.
Yeah.
Oh, if it's always been that way, I guess it could stay.
See, as-built plan, we've always had this bump out here.
Okay, yeah, there's the old
Yep.
50-foot
Oh, yeah.
build. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So, our regs talk about, construction of any kind is prohibited within the 50 feet.
Maybe if I can stop you, what section are you looking at?
Oh, 3.4 buffer zone.
Thanks.
Let's see. Structures include but are not limited to foundations and footings associated with single-family dwellings, multifamily dwellings, commercial and/or industrial buildings, porches, patios, decks, house additions, building additions, pools, septic systems, and sheds. So I don't know if you'd want to say that the wood deck is turning into a porch or an enclosed, I don't know.
Sean's reading, what I just heard you read was, it's the footings to those functions.
Yeah.
So the footings being in the same location makes this a footprint alteration.
Well, it says structures include but are not limited.
It's not
to.
getting any bigger. Is it? Am I wrong? Is it getting bigger?
Nope.
I mean, I'm struggling with that. It's not, they don't want to make it any bigger, they just want to go up a little bit. I'm having a hard time.
I mean, I guess the only thing that.
And I say no all the time.
Where the footings go in, they're staying in the same location. I don't think there's a change here.
I just,
I just wanna do
I think it's approvable.
No, I know.
I just think it's approvable.
But if this was the only activity on site for making the deck into a enclosed four-season room, we'd still make them file. Because it's
And that's sort of-
construction,
That's sort of what I'm
it's
getting
work.
at, is what's the verb, like,
Construction.
So they're here, right?
What turned me around on my whole premise on this was the line moved
Yeah,
by 15 feet. It was originally compliant. It was
Right.
designed in compliance. It was built in compliance. And because the line moved, to Steve's point, we're still dealing with a structure that was compliant. And we're simply building upon that and enclosing above it. Nothing else changes.
Right.
So the line moving is what changes, to me, changes the whole perspective of this.
And we have that discretionary authority. We can recognize that.
Yeah.
And that's why we have discretionary authority here. We can grant a waiver. Shouldn't even be a waiver, but it is.
well, I guess one question, I may have mentioned it to the architect that, you might need to, you're probably gonna need to manage the roof runoff for enclosing the deck now. Infiltration trench or something. I don't see that, but,
The volume of runoff hasn't changed. It just concentrates along the edges. So yeah, a drip edge
If
is the
you
only thing you probably
want
want.
to direct the runoff to a different area, I would have no problem with directing it.
or just.
We could direct it to a
Just
level
a drip
spreader.
edge, either
drip
side of the
edge,
gables,
stone
yeah.
drip edge,
Either
drip
got it,
edge.
yeah.
A level spreader somewhere. I mean, you can't go too crazy here.
So I've come full circle on the deck issue. Still the access to the addition, I think is what we worry about. And you said, Sean, that you think that putting an inspector outside is the way to control that. And
It was just an idea.
I don't disagree.
It's proposed as a temporary disturbance. So having a grown-up on site is the way to go. So if you got a 12-year-old out there operating the backhoe, the grown-up will take control.
Or a neutral.
Joe, I was looking at it again, I gave it, while you guys were talking about the deck, a pump truck can't get in there, and you ain't gonna be able to pump that far away. I was thinking a concrete truck dumping into a Bobcat, trucking over there.
You're not gonna buggy that in?
Huh?
Gonna buggy that in? There's no
It's
other way.
better than a wheelbarrow.
There's no other way.
What a mess.
I'm inclined to agree with a 6 or a 7 foot bucket,
everywhere.
right? A 6 or a 7 foot bucket on a
They
little
make,
Bobcat,
they make concrete buckets.
Can
So,
we-
whatever you need.
you know what I'm saying, Steve? Have a front loader, with discharge mixer, over by the driveway. Bobcat goes back and forth to dump it. But I would, unless it's up to the contractor.
But that's not up to us to decide.
I know, but I think
That's
we
his
should,
problem right
I
there.
think the commission
Wow.
should know what they're doing, because there's a lot of doubt in how this is gonna be done. So, myself, I think we have to know what it's gonna be. Well, it might be
I have
block,
no-
or it might be, it
I
might
doubt
be
it's too
wood
big. It's too
concrete,
big.
it might be this, it might be that. We should know.
Amy, do you have a picture of the other stairs?
Those stairs are gonna have to come out, there's no doubt about it. I don't know what it's made
Well,
of.
not the greatest.
I can't, it's hard to see from the
It's hard to
pow-
see,
picture.
but they go
What,
up the
what are the,
slope,
what are the
right?
front stairs made of? They're gonna have to come out, you ain't gonna be able to go by.
I'm also looking at the snorkel to a septic system right in the front corner there too. So, you got the gooseneck, I think your septic's are right in the front, so you're not driving across that either. There could be a Christmas candy cane lawn on it, but I don't think so.
That's why we're staying between the walk and the building.
Does- Everything's gonna have to come that way. The lumber,
Yeah, everything, the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Just carted back there, I guess. I don't know.
are you gonna get 16-foot rafters for sideways going down that?
Crane.
Yeah,
Couple of big kids,
Yeah, right?
yeah, a couple of big kids.
couple of big kids out carrying.
So I had asked Joe if the addition could be supported by sonative footings or piers. Is that, and you thought maybe no?
Just the size of it, the shape, I have no idea what the architect has in mind. This is a full basement, is a slab of grade, just, we don't have enough information on this.
It's a
It's a
slab.
slab on
Just a
grade.
slab.
Slab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Was
So what
that-
I'm looking at is the driveway grade approximately 138, call it 139, and the grade adjacent to the foundation is, 144, so it's 6 feet higher. And then figure 18 inches,
That's
just
about it,
splash
yeah.
area
Right.
to the sill.
Right.
So we're probably like 7.5, 8 feet above driveway. So you're not shooting that in. You're probably not pumping it in, and you're definitely not bugging it in without a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Or we can simply grant an approval that requires them to tell us how it is they're gonna get the concrete in. And, they can propose a path, and we can give them a narrow path they can work within. If they can't do it, they can come back and ask for modification.
That's what a pre-construction meeting's all
I
about.
think so, because, it looks to me, we've got probably 20 reasons how they can't get it. Somebody more innovative might find a way to get it
Well,
in
we
there.
shouldn't be designing it anyway,
No, I know, but
because then we'd own it.
So we just simply tell them, you can't do this.
That's all.
And then if they can't, they just need to come in and ask a waiver.
You hear that?
That's fine, and I don't think they would object to having somebody on site.
There would be a requirement.
Right, I think that's fine. I think that's a good idea.
I think we should know what you're doing before we send somebody out there. And I don't think I think, you're the engineer, so you should be able to come back here with us and say, this is how we're gonna put the footings for the addition.
Amy, is the deck in disrepair?
And also, to condition it, the shed and the concrete pad, before any commencement of work for the project, shouldn't start until that's moved. Because that's a violation, and we're not supposed to be approving projects.
Did you ask?
No, it's not.
Standing violation,
It's pretty standard
right?
pre-construction condition.
Yeah, that's out of here. That's out of
I
here,
understand.
okay. So we got that to do,
It's not in disrepair.
and
You know what people put-
I think you should go back to the
You know,
homeowner and the architect or whoever's designed this project, what your definitive plans are for the foundation and the footing. And even as far as, like you say, lumber and, they're gonna have to get a crane to bring this stuff in.
Do we want that information before we close, though?
What's that?
Do we want all this information before we close?
Yes,
Oh, okay. I
Because-
didn't,
Lou
I didn't
wants a
know.
definitive, Lou
Okay.
wants it to be definitive before we close.
yeah,
Okay.
because this way, I hate changing things as we
Yeah.
go along. Because once you get into the project, then what do we do?
So can you come back with that?
Yeah, yeah.
And also address the issue of the septic system, which Joe brought up. I mean, are you actually planning to drive across the leaching field? I'd like to hear what the plans are on that,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
that's something that, typically a builder won't want to do, and a homeowner doesn't want it done.
Okay.
And is it gonna be 3 footings in the same exact location?
I'm sorry, what?
Is it gonna be 3 footings in the same location that the
Yes.
current ones are?
Of the deck.
Okay. So you have directions.
I get it, yeah.
2 weeks, 4 weeks, what do you?
Oh, 2 weeks. I'm
Oh,
gonna
it's,
email everybody tonight. And then get back to me tomorrow, and I'll get a narrative. I'm gonna have the architect write it, not me.
All right.
I'll exactly what he's gonna do.
Continue to next meeting.
2 weeks. It's more
Next
than 2
meeting, yeah.
weeks.
All those in favor say aye.
It's more than 2 weeks. I don't know if
Next
there,
meeting.
was there any abutters?
No, there's no brothers.
No abutters? No. Okay. So
Okay.
we have one extra week between our next meeting, so,
I'm gonna email them tonight and have
Okay.
them get
Okay.
me the info by Friday, so I can get it
Okay.
to you.
okay. I think it's April 12th
Steve, you
is
know
our
what
next
Lou's looking
meeting.
for.
Yes.
Just bring
Yep.
that.
No, let the architect and contractor write it up and send it to me.
Very good.
Ask him not to come to the next meeting and take our temperature. Ask him to come with a definitive plan.
Right.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
Can I ask the commission to take something out of order? I have one quick question before I run out. And it's back, I guess it would be back onto a previous agenda item on Meadowwood.
Certificate of partial COC?
Didn't we already move on that?
So we voted, he's asking us to reconsider.
No, I'm not gonna ask you to reconsider. I'm gonna ask for some direction, because someone, an attorney's gonna ask me tomorrow, what do we do now? And I think, and I'd like the commission, if they could, if you don't mind taking this out of order, weighing in on it, I think that what they could do is file a request to modify the original order as it relates to this lot, to permit the wood deck that's sitting on grade and the stairs. And maybe on the wood deck, they cut it back so it meets the setback and it's not an encroachment. Is that kind of what you'd be looking, I mean, there's gotta be some point.
Procedurally? I mean,
Procedurally, yeah.
Practically is comply with the buffer zones, but whether that's done through a post, I would say come in with a modification, right?
Well,
Or just do it under an enforcement. I mean,
Sean, let me just, why wouldn't he just bring it into compliance and come back in for a COC request again and not modify
Because it's
anything?
got to
Because-
work within.
We
100 feet
gotta
of the
work in the
line.
buffer zone to
Right.
bring it in compliance.
Exactly.
Okay.
I
All right,
just don't
right.
wanna tell them to go out, cut off the corner,
Right, I got you.
and
I got
then you say, well, you did it without permission.
you. Yeah, I keep forgetting what could go wrong. Okay.
If you want, we can do it under an enforcement. I mean, I should check with you all first, but would we be willing to do that under an enforcement order so he doesn't have to come and file something in front of us to do the work we want him to do?
I'd be willing
Order
to,
to
I'd be
comply.
willing to grant any courtesy we can to the homeowner to
Yeah,
give him a chance to fix it.
absolutely.
Yeah, I would be willing to grant, a friendly restraining order would be,
Wrong job.
you know, they've been restraining orders with me for 45 years, now I gotta change the pace, I can't do it.
So if I talk to them tomorrow and, they say, yeah, they'll cut the corner off, then I can call Amy and get an enforcement order to do it under enforcement order. The commission will issue one. You have to vote to issue
We
one?
do.
I think we can give Amy the discretion to issue a enforcement order, and then we
When they came
can
to us at the next meeting for ratification, I'd support
be
that.
ratified at the
I'd
next
support
meeting.
that.
Yeah.
And the deck, and you said something about the deck on the
So-
side?
Would you
Patio
want-
on the side? You all set with that? You said you had an issue with
He's-
that too,
They're
right?
gonna put it in compliance.
They're gonna bring
Cut
it
a
to
corner.
compliance, yeah, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah, cut the corner.
It's the oldest thing, it's the oldest trick in the book. We tell them, bring it into compliance.
Cutting-
Come back when it is.
What are we talking about? Cutting the corner of,
We're not telling them
The
how to bring it into.
standalone wood
We're not
deck?
telling them how.
Yes.
Yep.
but asking for an after-the-fact modification for the porch and the stairs?
That wouldn't be modification. If we do it under enforcement order and tell them to comply, and they agree with our order, and they come into compliance, there's no modification.
Right.
They comply.
Right.
Now, conditions on enforcement order, we might tell them, you need to put an erosion, we may give them 2 or 3 conditions to allow that to take place, but
That
probably
that every
the easiest
engineer
way to
knows.
happen.
Right.
All right,
So cutting that corner of the rear porch means taking out those stairs and moving them closer to the house.
We didn't get
I'm
into
just
that
saying,
kind of
I'm
detail.
just saying.
If our,
I'm
whatever,
just saying,
whatever
it's
that means to
into-
them, that's between Steve and his client and the
Part of the
attorney.
enforcement order should have a pre-construction meeting.
And to get an enforcement order, we would expect to have a clear plan
Right.
of how this is going to be
Clearly,
done.
yeah.
Well, they have a 30-foot setback, so all you have to do is make sure everything's gonna be, what he's gonna do is 30 feet. Right now, it's at the 25.
Yeah, but she does bring up a really relevant point, is the stairs, the stairs go up 10 feet, maybe 8 feet high, and they're already cut like that, it's gonna be,
Oh, yeah, they have to. they
yeah,
have
they're gonna have to
demolish them.
move the stairs. Or is it just, moving the bottom pad of the stairs? It's moving the stairs.
No, it's moving the stairs. So you guys want to see a plan, and then you'll issue an enforcement order at the next meeting, Okay.
Okay,
right?
I hear you
As
suggestion.
far as the corner of the deck, the corner of the enclosed porch would stay where it is. It would just be the stairs would move, right? Is that what we're saying? Just so I'm clear to explain it to them.
Yeah, from what my understanding is, the only two places where it's within the buffer zone is at the bottom of the stairs.
Right.
And on the side porch.
Right,
And that the deck is cantilevered as designed, and
Right.
none of the deck that goes down to ground is
Right.
within the buffer zone.
right.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so, okay, I have that. All right, so I'll have to talk to them and then let Amy know.
Meanwhile, they remain denied.
Right, okay, great. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about.
Well,
What are you saying? So we have a rear enclosed porch,
Yep,
it's up on the screen,
yeah, there's no one here.
with stairs. Stairs are partly in the 25
Right.
and partly in the no-build.
Yep.
The corner of the porch is partly in the no-build.
But my understanding is what's been represented is that it's cantilevered.
It's
Right.
not cantilevered.
Not the stairs.
No,
Stairs.
not
No.
the stairs, but he said the
The
porch.
deck,
Which,
the
Just
enclosed
saying,
porch is
the
up.
rear enclosed porch is not cantilevered.
It's not
That's
cantilevered.
that's what we've
It's
been
got
hearing.
Rear, yeah, it's up,
It's got footings.
It's up, but it's
Right,
the
but it's-
columns. There's columns
Well,
on the
it's
ground.
above,
but it's above. It's
Yeah,
not
but-
on grade.
right, but it's not cantilevered.
It's not cantilevered, it's got footings going down that are in the buffer zone, is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's not what I heard a little while ago.
Okay, so I want to make
went back
sure,
now.
okay,
So
I
the
want to make
porch is-
sure you
yeah.
knew what was going on.
Yeah, no,
here.
thank you for bringing that up.
No.
It was,
Right.
I was being told, I think we all were, that this was cantilevered, and my understanding of that was that there was no footings or anything in the 25. He was mentioning how all of these were done that way by design, so they
When they
stay
did
out of
the,
the 25.
when they did the decks, they cantilevered them or they had knee braces.
Yeah,
I think this was enclosed, and when it was enclosed,
Maybe
probably
they
had
went
it.
ahead and
Okay,
did
so that's
the
another
footings.
violation. Well, So what-
okay, so I'll have to.
If you're asking the direction to follow, I would
Right.
say enforcement order to comply is what we would entertain. There are things you could probably do to move columns,
Right,
piers, outside the 50,
right,
reframe diagonally,
right,
superstructure, to
Right.
hold that up outside the 50.
Right.
And that corner stays where it is.
right.
The stairs, I'm not sure how you work, but as far as the structure itself, I think there's a way to work that.
Right,
Stairs is something you guys have to work on.
right.
but they're 30, Joe, right? Is
yeah,
this,
he said, he probably meant 30.
it's 30.
It's 30 for this project. but-
30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then the wood deck on the side,
that's on grade. That has to be clipped.
that has to be clipped. But
That's gotta
those have sonotube footings. And it's out over a, so it meets grade when you first step onto it,
And that does
and
this,
then it goes like this, so
okay.
probably have to move
Well,
the footing on that corner.
Like Al said, plain and simple, make it compliant.
We'll bring back a plan that makes it compliant, so you guys can review it and issue an
I think
enforcement order.
that's
How's
right.
that?
There's a lot more going on
That's
here.
the
Yeah,
first,
I'm not,
that's the.
I'm not gonna be,
Seamless first step.
That's really what I
You were
was.
right.
okay,
Clarification.
okay,
Okay, great.
All right?
Thank you.
You're
all
welcome,
right,
sir.
thanks.
All righty.
All right.
Next one is 242's 1864 42 J Road.
right, so this is a notice of intent. Work includes replacement of an existing septic system. Proposed septic system itself is approximately 69 feet from the BBW, and grading will be 55 feet from the BBW, but all work is out of the 50. Soil stockpile area is proposed in the outer reaches of the 100-foot buffer zone and will be enveloped by mulch sock. A dewatering dirt bag detail is shown on the plan, but not necessarily a location. I'm not sure you need to dewater for septics, but we can talk about it. 2 small ornamental trees within the buffer in lawn will be removed as they are in the footprint of the system. Our field inspector reviewed the wetland line and found it to be accurate. You know, all disturbed areas are proposed to be loamed and seeded when the work is completed. And a file number has indeed been issued. So Steve's here if you have any questions.
How deep do they have to go, Amy? I don't have a bottom elevation here. I don't think I do.
I don't know. It's hard to read. Let me get the plan.
I think the finished grade and the existing grade are pretty much the same.
I'm just interested in the bottom elevation, where you're digging it all out, to consider water dewatering, because this area is normally wet. You know where it is, so
Right, I think that's really there because of the septic tank. That's why, I think that's why Bill
septic
put the
tank, okay.
dewatering on there.
Okay.
Oh, there is dewatering plan on here?
Well, there's a dirt bag.
Dirt bag,
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
but not exactly placed anywhere, just
right.
where they pumped it.
Note 4 says no dewatering is expected. If dewatering is required, the pump discharge shall be approved by the designer and the NACC before activity begins.
So we don't have a bottom of bed, right? You see one, Joe?
So my first question was gonna be, has the Board of Health acted on this yet? And granted the waiver to replace within 100 feet, and in doing so, they would have looked at all the horizons to determine, separations. If Board of Health hasn't acted on this yet, we really don't have much to talk about. But do we know?
It's in the queue, I know that for sure.
They haven't yet approved it? The question you're asking is germane, but really, it's driven by what the Board of Health says.
Right. But I know it's gonna be above grade, above, because it says here, it's 93, and then 96 at the top. Where we put the stockpile. The existing grade right now is 93, and it's going to 96.
I think it's 96. I think it's 96 now. The spot elevations?
No, I don't think so, Brian.
No?
The
96.3,
96 is the finished
96.5,
grade.
96.4, yeah.
around the system.
Has she actually, have they issued it?
I'm looking.
You're looking. I know it was submitted.
Approved septic letter.
She approved it, right?
Yep.
Yep.
So let me say this, that the Board of Health is going to drive where the system goes, the separation to the bottom of bed to groundwater, the suitability of the soils, whether the need to over-excavate and bring engineered soils back. That's gonna say all of that. which is going to drive the question, how deep does it get, and do you need to de-water?
Right.
So until we have
Yeah,
we have none of that information at this point, until the Board of Health acts on it. Steve's company has probably done that as submission to Board of Health, but not to us, and we don't know what Board of Health is gonna say on the end.
Right.
But the question on dewatering is gonna be driven by all those questions.
All right, so until we get that information, we always have a rule that if a board is still outstanding on a certain board, we don't act on it. We usually continue it.
I think especially in this instance where whatever they decide affects what it is that we're gonna decide. I think we could all say wholeheartedly, we support replacing failed septic systems.
Oh, no, I don't like holding up septic systems.
All right, so we gotta continue.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
All right, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, next unanimous.
Was there any abutters for this public
Well,
hearing?
it's continued anyways.
Well,
Public hearing, we should probably ask for that.
I'm sorry.
Set the record straight.
It's an applicant only party.
Do we have any abutters here? I know the two that are here aren't.
Lou, you're
so-
all
right.
right.
No,
And,
it's right.
okay, so there's no abutters. And we are continuing because what? We need what?
Board
We
of
need
Health.
the other boards to issue the decision before we do.
The Board of Health has issued an approval letter. I just pulled it up.
Are there any details? We don't have the same information the Board of Health had.
Okay.
'Cause the
so-
question-
So you want additional information?
Yeah, we do.
All right, so we have an approval letter from the Board of Health, but we need information
We
on.
need the same
we
plan
need-
that the Board of Health got and from which they issued their decision.
All right. Okay.
Because you know what we're looking for, Amy, right?
Cross sections and stuff?
Yeah, the depth of the bottom of the bed. You know, there's gotta be separation between septic and groundwater.
Okay.
Right, to see
If
whether or
you-
not you need dewatering for the septic tank
Okay.
and for the leaching field
Right.
below as well. I
Right.
understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it's really the water
I'm pretty
table.
sure you submitted all of that to Board of Health
Right,
already.
the Board of Health
Yeah.
does have all that, so we'll
All
get
right.
that into you this week.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Next one is
And then there were three.
1210. I'm gonna transfer the board to, because I have to recuse myself.
Amy, I'm out as well on this one, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna
All
have
right.
to stay.
Do we have something after this that Ryan needs to?
See,
stick
you
around?
want
Yeah,
if you want to dismiss these folks, we can take that out
This
of
isn't gonna
order.
be a 5-minute hearing, I have a feeling.
For-
This isn't gonna be a 5-minute hearing.
Take the Foster Street update.
Yeah, I mean,
Let's take that out of order so they can go home and,
Oh, I'm sorry, you're
let's take the
right.
Foster Street out of order.
You know, you don't have to go home. You just
You
can
can
stay
wait.
there. You just
My mom used to tell me that.
read between the lines.
We won't call you back in if we do this
I'm
first.
sorry,
gotta go to
yeah.
satellite
Just one more
Save
item
a
of
seat.
business.
I'm gonna just take
It's gonna be quick.
No, that's okay. So the vice chair has asked that I contact Seacamp Environmental, who did an initial ecological assessment for this Foster Spill area. Vice chair thought it might be prudent to ask him to come back, considering we're on vernal pool season and spring critters are moving around, and we'd like to maybe see what any residual impacts, dead critters, dead vegetation,
And it's
what's
been
happening in
15
the vernal
months.
pools. Right, so I asked Pat Seacamp to provide a proposal for your consideration.
So, real easy, real simple. Based on the time of year and the activity that should be taking place out there in that system, I'd like to get Pat out there to go and observe and get real data in real time, see what's nesting, what's not nesting, what's alive, what's not alive. We know there are 2 or 3 vernal pools, and we know we have BLSF, we have tremendous migratory bird nesting normally. So we know what the normal is, and I want to just ask him to do one last assessment, even though the information I'm getting from the chairman is that it's not going to matter anyway. I think it would be good for us to have it. because maybe then we can make some kind of decision to the extent that we have any ability to do so.
I agree with you 100% now. The reality is, we got a resource that is ours, a resource that's been damaged, we don't know to what extent. We've been watching it somewhat. We watched it a year ago, but we haven't seen how it's deteriorated or recovered. I think it's probably a good thing to know, if it's recovered or not.
If there's no peep bear activity, no wood frogs, that'll be significant to hear,
Yeah.
or not hear. So,
And the fee I'm looking at is pretty minimal for us to get that kind of answer. And this is on our own behalf, not part of the filing, it's just
Right.
for our own information, right?
that's the basis of the request,
Yeah.
To see if the commission is interested in
I think
getting
it
that
should-
information, just to have it, we don't know where we're going from here with this thing. And, but it would be good data to have.
Well, and I think from a practical standpoint, if we do have, if we do have damage to the area, the environment in Foster Farm due to that spill, how could we get made whole? How could the town become whole? How could, how could we enhance the flora and fauna to at least get it close to what it used to be?
Well, that would be subject to the opinions of the experts. We have one expert on one side that's saying natural attenuation is gonna solve everything. And I think that's the biggest nonsense I've ever heard in my life.
That's the same from the representative, the
But
train
that's-
company in Palestine, Ohio.
But that's DEP,
Yeah.
and DEP and the licensed site professional and the insurance company, they're all together. The insurance company has basically told everybody, we're not gonna pay anymore. So you can do whatever you want, but we're not paying. And the LSP is only too happy to hear that, because he's been mailing it in for a year and a half now anyway, so this is real easy for him to continue to mail it in, because he's not gonna get paid anymore. So, I'm not gonna pull any punches about it, it's one of the most incompetent responses I've ever seen, ever in my life anywhere. And, he should lose his license, his LSP should be revoked. And, this will give us some information. I don't know if we'll ever be able to do anything with it, but it is what it is. So-
One more opportunity to take a look at it, makes sense. Whether we do that again, we'll talk about it next year.
We'll be able to put this in the book, and then we know, okay, this is how it started, this is how it finished, and, I don't know.
Or are we gonna get a definition of damages and a recommendation on how to overcome those damages from
Well,
GovCAM?
I haven't spoken to him. I asked Amy to talk to him. I didn't have a conversation with him this time.
I think it makes sense to move toward that end, to have the town be made whole for the damages that happened.
So that's gonna be up to competent counsel when we're done with this, when we're done with our assessments.
I don't think Pat, CCAM's company is going that far. I think they're just gonna do a habitat evaluation.
They're gonna,
And look at, basically do a census of what's out there and what's not out there.
yeah,
That's all we're getting.
that's all we can get right now, and then we can work from there.
The last time we went, we were a standstill and we had enough with their LSP. Because if I could have reached through the screen, I would have grabbed him through the screen, because when he was just basically telling us, that's all I'm gonna do.
Because because the law allows, they're complying with DEP standards, which are, I don't know how you can refer to them as standards, because DEP agrees that 800 or 900 gallons of oil can be dealt with through natural attenuation. I can't, I'm just speechless when I hear it.
No, all kidding aside, when the bottom line was all done, and Mike can see, we were looking for 200, they were looking for 200 gallons. When all was said and done. Now that 200 gallons has been in the wetlands
It was,
for a year and a half, or a year.
We never believed they extracted the first month to begin with.
Well, then,
I don't want to get into the weeds here,
So DP, the insurance company, and Clean Harbors stated that they did everything they were supposed to do per state regulation. Now, I've had, we turned it over to town manager and the town attorney, and they looked at it, and they're of the opinion, right now, that they covered a lot, that they're reluctant to have to go to court, because it's probably something that we're gonna lose anyways, and gonna spend thousands of dollars defending something that the courts are gonna probably say, hey, they followed state bylaws.
So let's, if we can.
This is just
Let's get the
paid
score.
information.
Let's
That's all
get,
this
let's
is.
get the info, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. I have no problem with this.
Does it require a motion to fund it? So-
Yeah, for the expenditure of funds. From filing fees? Is that which account is it coming from? If we're making a motion to spend funds, we have to tell you where it's coming from.
I
You have
know.
to tell us where it's coming from.
Amy makes the big bucks, why don't she pay for it?
So we hold our
Yeah.
filing fees in a separate account. They're
Yes,
for
I
the
know.
purpose of
Yeah.
this type of
Yes.
stuff.
Right.
Well,
I'm just thinking, is there any money in my regular budget? You could give me the option of choosing from my regular budget or our filing fees.
Give me the option in the motion.
Want the motion? All right, so I move that we authorize the Conservation Commission Administrator to spend the amount not to exceed $1,650 for the purpose of conducting environmental habitat assessment at Forester Street, with said funds to be first expended from the budget, and if not available, to then come from the filing fee account.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Blue opposed.
I just hate to see good money thrown into a dead situation.
Short money for the information.
Thank you, it's $50, it's just a principal thing. I think, we know what's out there. I mean, Al's been out there numerous times, and from what I've heard, people, you've gone out there. I mean, they're not gonna do any more.
The way I look at it, we have their information, we have CCAM's first information, and this information, that together, if we find there's in fact an impact, it might open up the door for grant for rehabilitation and remediation. Let's get the information and let's use it as we see fit. If we don't get the information, we have no opportunity.
Remember what Belushi said? It ain't over till we say it's over.
What am I now?
Or it ain't over till the fat lady sings.
No, he didn't say that. He said it ain't over till we say it's over. So I'm gonna go with that.
All right.
All right, thank you,
We
guys.
have
Thank you.
applicants here.
Let's get rid of these guys now.
All right, good seeing you guys.
Good
See you,
night.
Ryan.
Take care, Ryan.
Ain't like I don't like seeing you, but you've been here forever. This might be your retirement.
always-
But I hear the
Always be
clock
worse.
a ticking.
Yeah.
Tonight's the
We had a
night.
project that went with, what's his name, Pat Garner. How long do we have him? Like every week for the
14 years.
14 years.
14 years.
Ish.
This is 2016, so
I
I
know,
feel,
right? Yeah, we're.
I did 10 site reviews myself.
yeah.
Oh, my God.
Amy,
Jen,
Jen did 40. And Heidi lived there. All right, guys, have a
Good night, Lou.
thank you.
All right. I'm going to be the acting chair for this hearing, and I think we have a subcommittee that did a lot of work. I think, unless I'm very wrong, I think we should hear from the subcommittee first.
So we're not unified to begin with, and what we were wrestling with were really two different sets of criteria. One is, in order to consider shutdown, we wanted to have a target average, quote-unquote, average pH, and what would that number be? And we debated what the EPA ranges were for acceptable pH levels discharging to freshwater wetlands. And beyond that, we looked at the statistical element, and so what is the extreme pH number should we expect to see? And statistically, how would we calculate that? And before all of that, we looked at where would your sample points be to best represent how that all gets together. And we thought that at the sumps made more sense because each one of those has the opportunity to discharge into separate areas, resource areas. So that's what we came out of it. And what we went back and forth on was whether a statistical confidence interval of 95% based on a window of time in a sampling array made sense, or would simply looking at the ranges of low pH versus high pH as a not to exceed level make sense, and then the average of those EPA required ranges makes sense to hit a target to consider shutting down the system. We went back and forth on that. And we still go back and forth on that. I don't think we reached complete conclusion, and we said we wouldn't. We said we'd come back to the commission and say that, and so we could talk about that together.
So here's what I suggest. Jack sent out an email. He has
Hey,
some-
Jack, was that accurate?
Yeah, pretty accurate.
So what I'd like to do, I'd like to give Jack a chance to present his opinion based on the email that he sent out. And then whenever, any disagreement or disagreement that you and Sean have down there, and then we'll move on from there. But why don't you give us, you sent out some numbers that you wanted to suggest, so I'd like to give you the floor to do that.
And if you could, Amy, could you bring up the scatter plot? If you can do that, that would illustrate my point. We did have a good discussion, very good discussion for about an hour, and we talked about the proposed criteria for, excellent. The proposed criteria to shut down the pH buffering system, the temporary pH buffering system. I had advocated for just making the criteria be related to the dispersity of data within the scatter plot that we had. And it's all the data from the very beginning of the system. And we went around and around on it. And when we came out of the meeting, we decided, well, okay, we'll do the range, we'll do the average and range criteria based on EPA guidelines, okay? And that was our decision on that day, and that's actually, I think, what kind of got written into the criteria. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really verbalize my thoughts as accurately as I wanted to and succinctly as I wanted to that day. And after further review, what I've come up with is a constructive suggestion that I think covers off everything. To retain the average and range criteria that we had decided on in our meeting, but to put a statistical requirement to that that would really give me and I think give the town a better sense for the reliability that, acceptable pH water will be discharged from this site. And going back to what we're, to further illustrate my point, we've got the scatter plot in front of us right now, and the criteria is to take a 30-day window, evaluate range and average and range of data, and if it's within, range, if it's within average and range criteria for 30 days, you then go to a 60-day, you turn off the system and then monitor for another 60 days. If it stays within the average and range for that additional 60 days, you can terminate the system and walk away. Okay, that never passed the smell test with me, and again, I didn't verbalize it very well when I in our meeting. But since then, I think the average and range as drafted makes all the sense in the world if we know what the dispersion of the data is. And I'm proposing a 12-month period prior to even evaluating whether we can shut down the system or not. So the proposal is, in a nutshell, to say, okay, when you look at this data and when we evaluate it monthly, as the modification proposal suggests, we also calculate a standard deviation within that month, and actually for the 12 months prior to that. That will give us a sense for what the data dispersion is in the most recent past, and it will give us, frankly, a relevance of what the average means and what the range means, in our shutdown criteria evaluation. And why am I really hammering on this? Look at the data. We've got, and I'll point to the screen here, we've got periods where the data is very, relatively uniform. We've got data that is right next to it where it's quite a bit diffuse, diverse, variable. And the reason I say that it defines what the range and the average mean is because you can easily calculate an average, you can easily identify a range of data, and if you take it from this period of time here, it's going to look pretty good. But if you go out, say if this is our 30-day period, this is our 60-day period, and you get out into here, and we're discharging, 11.5, 12 pH material, which happens actually in this period, you lose the meaning of the range and the average data that we're using as criteria. So what I'm proposing is that we add a, do you have it? Okay. Yeah, I'm proposing that we basically define the 95% confidence interval, which was proposed as part of the modification that came out of our subcommittee meeting. But, and I'll read it to you, but you have it in writing in front of you. The 95% confidence level interval will be defined, and the meaning will be that the monthly assessments shall include calculation of the standard deviation of all pH values observed in the previous 12 months. The temporary pH buffering system may be considered for permanent shutdown if the 12 months of pH measurements reflect the variability defined below. The average value is 8.3 or lower, and the 95% confidence interval is within the EPA suggested limits of 6.5 and 9. So basically what this says is you need a level of uniformity first to define whether you're ready to shut down or not, using the average and range as we have suggested. So that's really my only change from our discussion couple weeks ago. And I think what it does is it gives the town an assurance that, when we say it's time to shut off the system, the data is uniform enough that we have a 95% confidence level that it will indeed be suitable water to discharge onto the abutter's property. So that's what I have.
Okay. So with that, and I 100% agree with what Jack just stated, I had looked at the simple average, instead look at the range, between the 6.5 and 9, and came up with the 7.5 number, or 7.75 number. And in reality is, that may be arbitrarily low because we're not taking into account a statistical analysis of the high ranges. But because we're doing that, bringing it up to the 8.3 level, still within the range that EPA recommends, and also based on, the type of wetland that we have and the waters around it, that's probably more reasonable so long as we temper it with a confidence interval. If we're getting both, I think I'm okay with raising that up to the 8.3.
What does that do to your suggestion?
It's fine.
It is, I thought that was your suggestion.
Yeah.
8.3. They're in agreement.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed it. There it is.
And if
So-
they're in agreement, I'm in agreement.
So, I would also say that if our two experts are in agreement here, I'm happy with that number. I like that
Well,
number.
3. Mike's
Michael?
goal is very much involved in the
Michael?
biology
Mike
of this.
hasn't commented.
I apologize.
This is the first I've seen of this.
Yeah.
So I haven't had a chance to noodle on it. I would say on the face of it, it sounds like a very good solution. I will note that it is less conservative than Sanborn Head's original proposal in that looked at a strict average to the committee's point of an average of 8.3, but what it took out was any individual reading that exceeded 9, at the time 9.5, which has been discussed down to 9. So the one thing I would suggest for consideration is that individual point value, losing that actually drops a level of conservatism in the assessment. However,
It doesn't lose that.
it certainly does. It certainly does, and let me explain why. Because at any given point in time along that line, if you have one reading, just one, it normalizes the data, and I fully agree with you for standard deviations and normalizing of data from that approach. But if you have one singular reading, any of that time period, any 30 days at above 9, at the time 9.5, that kicks the system back to day 1.
And I didn't change that.
You did.
No, I
I
didn't.
think you did by go to the 95% confidence level. You did.
No.
It says the
Actually,
95% confidence interval is within the EPA suggested limits of 9.5 and 9. The getting rid of any reading above 9 has been eliminated.
No, actually, I think you misunderstood
Okay,
my
make it clear,
proposal.
'cause that's what I heard too.
No. Okay, we set out the criteria as we discussed in our meeting, which was average and range for 30 days and then a following 60 days, okay? I'm not suggesting we change any of that, including the reference to the 95% confidence interval. What I'm saying is, there's a gate at the beginning of this consideration whether we can shut the system down or not. You don't even start considering whether you can shut it down until your data gets narrow enough that the average and range have a relevance to wastewater discharging from this particular site.
So make sure.
Because right now, I don't understand this data, why it gets narrow, why it gets wide, and I don't think, maybe you guys do, but I don't. And without that understanding, it could go very diverse very quickly.
This is in addition to, prior to starting that.
Yes.
I misunderstood. I thought that was a
Yes.
replacement too, so.
Yep,
I misunderstood.
not a replacement.
It's not written, so I'm thoroughly confused.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh,
No,
did you give?
no, I
me-
just
Okay.
gave it to him.
But to Mike's point, we have 3 phases essentially. We have a 30-day shutdown period with the system on. We're measuring pH, and Mike and I and Amy have spent a lot of time talking about that 8.3 interval and the 95% confidence interval, and we discussed it at length. And then we have a 60-day period where the system is shut down, and then we're doing the same level of testing. So you're saying this is a precondition to all of that?
Well, yes, technically it is.
But
We have in our criteria that the 95% confidence interval will be considered, but we don't define what that is, and we don't
talk about what the consideration is. It's just a sentence that is in the criteria that, read at face value doesn't mean anything.
If I could maybe assist, I think, and please tell me, Commissioner, if I'm putting words in your mouth, what you're suggesting is for that 12-month period prior to, it's like in addition to that item 1, for the monitoring or pH of the treatment system. This is how you would determine in that 12-month period leading up to water quality being considered acceptable. That's how you're looking to normalize the data for that 12-month period, saying, okay, for that item number 1, we're ready to shut down. So you're looking, wouldn't be an additional data collection, and correct, please don't let me put words in your mouth, but it's normalizing that data to understand when you get to this point in number 1 of an average of 8.3 with no higher readings greater than 9, you're ready to get to that step 1.
I make one, and thank you, Mike, and I would make one correction, and that is, I don't think it's going to take any more data at all. It's a simple calculation based on the data that you're collecting.
Yeah. So it's a not a manipulation, that's the wrong term, but bear with me. Using the data that you're collecting, it's that taking that year's worth of data so that as you see that trend line going down, it's normalizing that data around that trend line, using what you're already collecting with some math ahead of getting to kind of like we're ready to shut down the treatment system. So it kind of narrows your band, as you're saying, normalizes the data. Is that kind of, is that accurate? I don't want to put words.
So basically, can I say it even more
Yeah.
layman terms?
Yeah.
You want to see less outliers,
Yeah.
right? So you don't,
I would love to see data like this, but what we're seeing is data
Right.
like this.
so you want that.
And so if we say, if we define, if you guys want to shut down the system based on, like I said before, based on this time period, and then it goes to this time period after the 60 days, I can't really represent with a straight face to the town that I have any assurance that it will stay within EPA guidelines.
I agree with you. Let me just offer a couple, maybe more logical points. And John and I were talking outside. Obviously, we understand there's a 3.5-year horizon for shutdown projected. So, and the shutdown period takes our site assessment monitoring from once a month to once a week. So it quadruples our costs. So we're not going to attempt shutdown until we're pretty confident we're in the range. It's just pure logic and business. We're not going to do that. And so in that sense, I agree. We're keeping an eye on the same data that you are. What I don't understand the 95% interval over a year, because now it's taking my 30-day shutdown test period and making it a year and 30 days. That's what you're doing. You're saying I got to hit a 95% confidence interval in the 6.5 to 8.3 range for 12 months before I can start shutdown period 1. So that's a year shutdown period.
At your current sampling level.
The sampling's irrelevant.
Well, you said it would cost more to quadruple the sampling during the test period. I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm suggesting you,
But you-
I mean, you've got, how many, 36 months worth of
Okay.
data here?
So let's get to my second point, which is the point that Mike raised, which is what really makes me unfavorable to the year. The point I made to Mike from the very beginning that I saw this was, I agree on the range, 6.5 to 8.3. I agree on the confidence interval at 95% because you're throwing out the highs and the lows, and you're taking a real look at the meat of that pH. But what I don't agree with is, if you're going to take a look at the real meat of the pH, and I have one reading outside of that range, by the language that's here, I have to start over again. So if you're gonna look at the meat of it, look at the meat of it. But don't hold me to the standard if I have one outside of it, I've gotta restart.
I don't think you start over again. I think.
No, I do.
Your window slides.
No, I have to restart. That's
So
what
year
paragraph one
another whole
says.
year ahead?
Paragraph one, the 30-day period says, I can have no reading above 8.3. Not a single reading.
9, I think it's 9.
It's 9.
I asked it to be 9, and if it's 9, it's 9, that's fine. But if I have one single reading during that, I gotta start over another 30-day period. If that's sliding now into a year, I'm never gonna get there.
It's not.
Shut down.
It's not.
I think once you get an
Yeah, I'm not-
exceedance, your 30 days before simply slides forward a day at a time.
No.
Is that what?
No, I think you're thinking what my suggestion is, that we go to the 30-day criteria for 12 months before we even start considering shutting down. Is that what you think?
Let me explain it the way I understand it, maybe then you can tell me how I'm wrong, okay? As I understand it now, we've got to use the 95% confidence interval over a 1-year period to be sure we are in this range of 6.5 to 8.3 before I can start a 30-day test.
Yes,
That's what you're saying.
that is,
Okay.
yes.
So it doesn't slide as Mr. Lynch would suggest. It's a 1 year. And so, it may slide by months, but you're taking my 30-day test period and turning it into a year.
I'm not. I'll actually go back to a statement that you gave me earlier, that from a business standpoint, you want to be uniform enough that you can reliably go to your 30-day period, because it's going to cost you more, and you don't want to be going around and around in that.
Yeah, but
You can calculate the standard
that-
deviation
that-
on this data today.
That may be true, but my point is, we may reach that conclusion on a six-month data standard. That may be enough confidence for us to try your test. Why should it have to be a year? You're turning 30 days into 30 days in a year.
I'm not.
If it's an interval, I might be able to live with it, but I don't think it should have to be a year. 6 months should be enough time for us to study the interval and then go into testing.
Testing shutdown.
Testing
talking about
shutdown.
Testing shutdown.
Testing
shutdown.
Not permanent shutdown.
Well, but permanent shutdown follows testing
So,
shutdown.
following Attorney Brown's train of thought, you're saying is once you demonstrate that you're at that level, you would do a demonstrated shutdown and then begin the 60-day window to determine whether it's working, and you then request permanent shutdown. Is that correct? Based on only that data?
As we discussed it, there's 2 levels of shutdown, okay? One, I just call them
Tests.
test shutdowns that we may do for 48 hours, we may do for 78 hours. And as Mike and Amy and I have worked on the language, we just made it at our discretion, near rain events, near dry events, and we just see how the system goes. And so we have kind of a pregame of sorts as to how the system is being affected by shutting it down, and we will do that periodically. When we start that, certainly we're going to be paying attention to the data, and it makes no sense to start it right now. It may not make any sense to start it for 2 years out. And so that's the pre-shutdown criteria testing. And I think over time, we'll build from 72-hour periods to a week to 2 weeks. It requires advance notice to Amy, and when we have these shutdown periods, we need Paul McManus on site to do the site assessments, and we have your daily pH readings coming from our sumps and our influent tank. So that's what's going to happen during a pre-test shutdown. And then we have our 30-day test shutdown period, which you're now preconditioning on a 1-year interval of this 95% confidence factor, which it's hamstringing us
It's not. You've got 12 months of, you've got 36 months of data right there. You
But-
can just
but if
calculate.
if we have 6 months,
If
we
you
have
were
6 months
uniform
of
enough,
positive data,
if you
why
were
can't we try?
uniform enough right now, you could
We-
start
we
it
both-
tomorrow.
We both agree, we're not uniform right now. We understand there's a three and
And
a
that's
half year
why-
time year.
That's why we need to get some meaning
I'm-
into this
I'm not-
range and,
I'm not disagreeing with
average.
giving you some meaning, as you put it. What I'm disagreeing is giving you 12 months of meaning. I think it's safer if, it's fairer if we give you 6 months' worth of meaning. When we look at the data, I say, you know something, we're hitting pretty steady at 7.8. Why should I have to do that for another 6 months? You know, if we're meeting that 95% interval curve for 6 straight months, we should be ready to start testing.
One question I have is during certain, I mean, we live in 4 seasons here.
That's
And-
my point.
And
That
does
was
the
the
wet,
point
and does the
I was
weather and
gonna
the
make.
conditions affect water flow and the pH levels? And if
Yes.
that's the reason why you do it, it makes sense to do it over a year.
Well,
For
in the
accuracy
current,
purposes.
in the current conditions, when we go to our 60-day testing period, we have to capture 2 rain events and 2 dry events. So Mike has already built that somewhat seasonal protection for you into the criteria. We can't just arbitrarily pick 60 days. We have to pick up 2 dry events and 2 rain events. Now, we've argued a little bit
That's a
about.
protocol defined by EPA anyway. so
Yeah, and
that-
we've
that
argued a
aligns
little,
with that
yeah,
approach.
we've argued a little bit about what should be a rain event, but that's a.
Actually,
that's a-
EPA defines it very well,
So-
including snow melt-off.
So that's my
Considered-
only concern.
Can be
You-
considered a rain event.
You're adding a year to the process.
I'm not adding any time to the process.
You are. You're saying I
not.
have to have 12 months of meeting your interval curve before I can try testing.
Are you gonna continue doing what you're doing?
Doing what?
Monitoring pH and buffering the
Obviously, yes.
water? Yes, right?
We've submitted a budget. We were at $43,000 a year for pH monitoring, site observation, supplies, materials, and everything like that.
I'm not extending
We're-
anything.
we're committing to
Mr.
that.
Attorney Brown. I'm not extending anything.
I think
You
that you
could
are.
start it tomorrow if you're, if we
But I
had
have to
meaning to
meet
this
it.
data.
I have to meet it. That's the
Yeah.
key.
You do.
For a full year.
Okay.
I just don't think
I
that's
think
fair.
that's reasonable.
I don't.
Okay,
Yep.
you can disagree. What's our next point here?
So this, I'm just trying to figure out from a procedure standpoint, this is a condition that everyone's thinking about yet hasn't been drafted? I don't have a draft of
It's
it.
been drafted 5 times, so
Well,
it's a work in
just-
progress.
Just in the email that I gave you.
No, just an email.
That's all we have in terms of.
Do you have a copy of the email?
It's crafting, not a draft.
Yeah.
If I may ask,
So if you have the copy of the email,
if I may ask, Mike, what's your thoughts on a year? I mean, is it important to get 4 seasons in there?
It depends on when the tests start and finished, but a 6-month window would likely carry at least a dry and a wet season through quarters. So either a spring into a summer into a fall, a fall
Depends
into
on
a
when it
winter.
starts and ends. I disagree.
So we're averaging.
I'm saying it could.
24.
I'm saying
It
it could.
depends on when it starts and ends.
It also
You
depends
could-
on- it
You
also-
could split
yeah.
the seasons.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking it through out loud.
Yeah.
12 months would provide more certainty to that as well.
Let me ask you this other question then. If it were 6 months and not 12 months, could you sit here and guess what months that's gonna be, most likely?
No.
And actually, I tried to do that, just looking at the data, layman's, and it wasn't consistent. I was trying to make some sense of the data. Maybe it was dry in this period, maybe it was wet at this period,
Part
but
of
it was
controlling
different,
the
so.
period is Mike's requirement that for the following 60 days, first we're testing the system when it's on. And we're shutting it down, going 60 days. And Mike's requirements are that within that 60-day period, we pick up 2 dries and 2 wets. So I did a bunch of rain data that I supplied to Mike that over at the Lawrence Airport over the last 3 years. So because I got to pick up 2 of each, it's kind of constricting me in its time if we're using the half-inch measurement for rain. At a quarter inch, I got more opportunities. So that's one issue I've raised with Mike, but that requirement is narrowing the times in which I can try these tests because of that requirement. I have to pick up, some months only have one wet day. It classified as a half an inch of rain. One. Some have zero. So if I tried a September, August, an August-September date, I wouldn't meet Mike's criteria, which I understand is fair.
So from a stormwater perspective, when I go out and do outfall monitoring and testing and sampling, I am obligated to do quarterly testing at all my outfalls. And at least one of those samples, doesn't matter when it is, must occur and meet in a period when it meets the definition of wet weather flow, and one of which must meet the definition of dry weather flow. It doesn't mean you have to precisely hit it, it's that in the course of the year, you must be able to hit those types of samples. So if you're out there over a period of time, and you're monitoring on a pretty regular basis, and you see a rain event that meets the definition, and you're gonna get several a year, that's my wet weather sample, and you've met that record. It's not like you have to target it and hit a calendar precisely, because you're measuring already.
Yeah. If
You
it
just
was
simply
one- if it was
extract
one of
that point and
each-
say, this is my wet weather sample,
If
this
it-
is my dry weather sample.
If it was one of each sample, wet, dry, during that 60-day period, I'd be fine. Because I got enough opportunities, although they're limited, but I got a better chance of the opportunities, let's say it that way.
So if I might make a suggestion on that point, would,
And I couldn't do any wet weather samples the entirety of last summer.
2022,
I could not hit a single wet weather definition in the entirety of all last second and third quarter.
I'm not surprised. So two items, and Commissioner McDonough, I want to come back to something you said about timing. What this data reflects to me, looking at meteorological data, is our worst events prior to the start of the system back in 2020. This variation is really driven by dry weather, the drops in pH. I think it's limited saturation of the RCA, and I think our spikes are rain events. That being said, I'd like to offer a suggestion on that range. We talked about a half inch, which is an EPA definition used for SWIP, construction general permit. I understand, Attorney Brown, your position on a quarter of an inch is something more frequent. Would the commission and Attorney Brown, would you be willing to entertain a range in that? So rain events between a quarter and a quarter to more than a half an inch. Because what I would recommend that we see is situations where we're actually saturating that RCA condition. So what we're collecting at the outflow is representative of a good rush of flow through that material.
Off the top of my head, I would agree. I would prefer Mr. Lynch's suggestion that I do one of each instead of two of each.
Instead of two each.
Yeah. But the range gives me more opportunities. That's doable.
So
And I believe that- and I
with that
believe-
EPA definition, what they're looking at is runoff, basically conveyances through pipes. What we have is something different. We're actually collecting water, concentrating it, soaking it through a media. So what would normally be a dry weather condition, site-specific, it very well might meet the definition of runoff getting into the ground.
Exactly, because of the rain store system that's out
Because
there.
of-
And
It very well could because of the conditions that we have here.
So now we're measuring not precipitation, but rain into the runoff system?
no, I think we're trying to figure out the
I'm
rain
just trying to
event that would-
justify, relaxing
No,
it
but
to a different level.
My point is the same one you raised, that if I followed the 2023 data, there are 4 months in which I could have never attempted this testing. Wouldn't have made it. Not enough rain events. And I shouldn't be penalized for that.
So it's the 60 days that's penalizing you, right?
No, it's the rain, I have to capture, according to the current draft, 2 rain events, 2 dry events. So if you looked at June through August, I think in total there were 4 rain events. I wouldn't make it.
So, but that's because you're limited by 60 days. Eventually, you're going to get your rain events.
Well, at the same time, we're doing site assessments too. So to that respect, I think the 60 days is good because we're I don't have Mike, Paul McManus walking all over the site for months. I have him there for 60 days. Plus, I'm ramping up pH testing to daily. I'm ramping up pH testing in the sumps. You know, I'm doing a lot of activity above and beyond what we normally do right now during that 60-day period.
Well, let me ask you a different question, I guess. If you got to that 60-day period and you had your 2 dry days and you had your 1 wet day, you'd be getting pretty happy, right? We got 1 more to go. Wouldn't you rather wait another 30 days to get that extra day than shut it all down and go back for another year?
I don't get to wait. It's 60 days is 60 days.
Well, is that within our control?
If you say it's 60 non-consecutive days, I don't know how you say it that way, but I think that's what you're...
How about just until you get 2 dry and 2 wet events?
Within
Yep.
what period of time, though?
Why does there need to be a time period?
Yeah.
I mean,
That's-
because
that would
McManus
work.
is gonna be out there?
That would work.
In outfall monitoring, it's in the course of a year. I have hit 2 of each events.
I'm fine. That would work.
Is there a reason to keep it, I mean, am I missing something here? Is 60 days important?
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe that requirement came from the original Sanborn Head recommendation, so I think it was carried forward.
I think a lot of this came from the original
So-
Sanborn Head recommendation, but that was Vern Kokosa, who hasn't been with the project for 2 or 3 years. Vern's job was to figure out the well point system. He had nothing to do with the dewatering treatment system.
That's inaccurate. He actually wrote this plan and it had the whole trench system as part of the design. So
I'm
that
just
was
saying.
incorporated. So I
It's a
think
little
I disagree with
outdated.
you on that point.
Okay.
Outdated, but that's the last time this
No,
is the
you're
version
right.
that
It came from Vern's draft, no argument there. But if all we had to do was pick up 2 dries and 2 wets, I'm fine.
Could it be switched to, instead of 60 days, to quarterly? I think my suggestion on that is because the period is important in that we want to make sure that there's a saturation level event, whether it's 1, whether it's 2, and I would defer to the commission to decide that we're seeing real water moving through that system. I think that's important.
And where does the 60 days,
I carried it forward from the original one, so this is, it puts me in an odd position where I am being asked to modify something another consultant scientist has presumably put forward and thought through.
Yep.
So while I'm adding and providing color to and suggestions for the commission and for everyone, I'm presumably he thought about his time periods and wanted to say it. This is the time period I'm putting forward, so those are clearly all up for discussion, but I have to defer to others.
Yeah, I would agree to a quarterly period, I think language like not to exceed a quarterly period, where I pick up 2 rain events and 2 dry events, with the rain events being defined as a range between a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch. I would agree with all that.
we talked about the word conservative approaches. Is that any more or less conservative, just talking about the time period, than a 60-day time period?
60 days is more conservative, and to Attorney Brown's point, it does put an odd time constraint, because if whatever the season is, whatever the year is, you're at day 60, and day 61 is your rain event, and everything else is done, you are now restarting that. So the 60 days is a very conservative measure.
So what's the suggestion?
I think the quarterly, maybe not to exceed 90 days, if that makes sense. It might give a little bit more flexibility, and if we maintain the 2 dry and 2 wet during that period, that might be a little bit more doable, because you're not spanning a quarter, which was frankly, a whole month is a whole bunch more time.
So quarterly, keeping the 12 months as suggested by Mr. Maben?
I think that one's, yeah,
That's before we even get to all
Yes.
this.
What's that?
That's before we even get to all this. He's setting that as a precondition to all of this,
Okay.
and that's what's troubling me.
Well,
I would agree on a 6-month. I mean, if I had to agree on a precondition, it seems to me, logically from a business standpoint and scientific, that I had 6 good months of testing. You know, I'm ready to give this system a shot.
But we get droughts, right? We can get.
No, but I've got to fit your interval for 6 months. Drought, rain, you name it, the conditions. I've got to fit your interval for 6 months before I can try this. That's my understanding of what the commissioner is suggesting. I can't do any of this until
12
I
months.
satisfy you.
He's saying 12 months.
12.
Yeah, I'm just
12.
making a spoke.
That
So
that I
similar to the
completely
last
disagree
thing, does 9 months work?
I think the idea is to have all 4 seasons.
Well, I did too, but I started hearing something a little different, that 6 months maybe isn't enough, a year is too much. Does 9 months cover your most
Maybe.
weather events?
So if I could just.
But we're looking at it through 2 different eyes. We're looking at it through the environment and the impacts on the system. And the attorney is looking at it from a business perspective. He's got to report back to his business people.
Yeah.
They're looking at it in dollars and cents. We're looking at it in pure science. I think the science should drive the project.
I'm
I'm not really looking, to be clear,
I
I'm,
disagree with that, Al.
I'm really not looking at it
You've
through.
done a good job with the science.
Al, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not looking at it through his eyes.
I'm not looking at
Not
it
for a
from a
second.
business standpoint, to be honest with you. What I'm looking at is, obviously, eventually, we want to get the shutdown criteria and stop spending money. That may be the business goal. What I'm objecting to is the precondition. I've got to satisfy a precondition, then go into a 30-day period and satisfy it again. That's the way this is written right now. And I think a 12-month precondition is just too long. If you're worried about seasonal aspects, we could have 6 months, but we pick up, 4 wets and 4 dries. We can mimic seasonal conditions by requiring the wet and dry things.
And if I could just, Commissioner Manzi, there's 2 different parameters talked about. There's Commissioner Mabin, which is kind of the precursor to what we're going to call item 1 under the permanent water treatment system. But I think what we were just hashing out was these wet and dry events is what follows that. So this is after that. So
Yeah, no,
we're just having 2 different issues floating.
No,
so
I said it in response to Chairman Manzi's
Yes. I just wanted to get one
idea
settled if
that
we
we
could.
needed to pick up all seasons. And my idea was, I think in 6 months, you can pick up the elements of all seasons by measuring them with wet and dry conditions. That's my point, to satisfy it in a shorter period of time, but capture the same elements.
I don't know, again, I'm outside my area here, but I don't know if I would agree with that. I mean, if you just look at, the amount of rainfall through 6 months versus the other 6 months, it could be, we just don't have consistent rainfall here.
What if you consider
But I would
what
have
if
to
you
hit
consider
it.
9-month precursor period, and then you add your 30 days, and then another 60 days, you've got 12 months there. That's to support your suggestion of 9 months
Yeah,
precursor period.
I know you don't agree with me. I don't agree with 12 months or 9. I think 6 months is probably more than I would agree to, and I have to go back and sell my client on it, because you're really stretching the testing period out now over a longer period of time. That's what you're really doing.
You're not.
Yeah.
You're not.
You're just getting a bigger
You're just
sample.
doing calculations.
As it's currently drafted, I have 2 testing periods, 30 days and 60 days.
Yeah.
With your precondition, I now have a year. I have 3 testing periods.
You don't.
Yes, I do.
Certainly
Well,
don't.
what am I misunderstanding about
Explain
this?
again, because I think I know what you're saying, is over the 12 months, looking at this statistical manipulation to understand you've hit the target. We are now eligible. We hit the average, we've never exceeded the range, we are now eligible to consider shutdown. At that point, they start the first 30 days, correct?
Yes, in other words, if you can establish a uniformity of data, then the range and the average mean something. Now the data is ready to analyze by those 2 measures. With the data how it is now, and I don't know how it's going to go forward, but the way it is now, it certainly is not.
I agree in
I
principle,
can't-
I just disagree in the length. I agree, we should have a predictable set of data that precedes testing. I agree with that. I think 12 months is too much. That's my position. You all may disagree, that's my position. I respect that.
No, when you say testing, do you mean testing, shutdown test?
No, what?
Or you mean
Unless I'm
permanent?
completely misunderstanding.
No, I just want to make sure we're talking about the right types of shutdown.
Commissioner
yeah, when we say
Commissioner is
testing,
suggesting that as a precondition to.
Of permanent permanent shutdown.
Permanent shutdown
Okay.
criteria
I
testing.
just want to make sure.
I have to hit a time interval in which I meet the 95% confidence interval. And his proposal is that that interval be 12 months. And my suggestion is, or my position is, I think 12 months as a precondition is too long. Because you're now stretching out my potential to reach shutdown criteria by a year.
So, refresh my memories. Right now, your sampling interval is what it has been for the past 3 years, thereabouts. It's not continuous, it's not, it's somebody physically going out there and taking a reading, or calling it up and taking a reading every few days, not constantly.
Well, to take a step back, in this agreement, I believe, in the beginning, under dewatering treatment system, Mike has ramped that up to daily testing of pH. So talking with John, we're going to put a probe into the influent tank and give you daily pH readings. Where now LRT and John are coming on the site every 3 days and doing them manually.
Right now they are.
Yes.
But under the ramped up protocol, it would be daily. And it-
Under Mike's
It's a,
drafting.
it's a probe that you can dial up and take a reading for the day.
Correct.
Yeah.
Data logging, you're
Yeah.
gonna be able to see ranges
Yeah.
and,
We agree with that.
It's an app.
so we're getting that on a regular, so right now we're getting periodic.
You're getting readings every 3 days.
Does that mean that reducing it to 6 months with daily readings improves the data? Or is the 12-month window driven by the current sampling frequency?
Current sampling frequency.
So if we tighten that up, are we more inclined to say 6 months is representative?
To add to that, the chart that you're seeing there is a measurement of pH every 3 days. That chart right there. And to go to every day, you're gonna triple the abundance of data.
I'm not
And you're
asking-
gonna-
I'm
and
not
you're going
asking
to
you to
capture
do that.
specific
That's
rain
not the
events and
proposal.
dry events.
But isn't, that's not really that, I mean, looking at.
We're doing this before we even consider shutdown testing. We're doing that tomorrow.
But looking at this, I don't think the 3 day, doing it daily is going to change things much. I mean, when you look at the outliers there, you see 4 in a row that are way out there. So that's going to be 12, that's 12 days of stuff. It's not like it's here and here every time.
I don't have a single argument that at today's current conditions, that we are in any position to start any testing. We have a long way to go.
2.5, 3 years.
2.5, 3 years. What I'm concerned about is, what does that line look like? And do I have to measure the line for a year? Or do I have to measure the line for 6 months? That's my argument.
And to be clear, the proposed amendment is to continue doing what you're doing. And once the data gets narrow enough that it makes sense, that we can confidently define the maximum pH that is likely to emit from this system, then you start focusing in on that for your 30-day and 60-day period.
I agree with that
You're doing nothing
100%.
different.
I agree with that 100%.
Well,
What I
that's
don't
what
agree,
my proposal is.
but your proposal is, I've got to measure data over a year for you to figure out, am I hitting this narrow margin? And I'm just suggesting a shorter time, that's all.
You're not doing anything different.
We're right, we're not doing anything different, but the data's now coming in.
And by that trend line, well, that just disappeared, by that trend line, you're more than 12 months out anyway.
I'm 2 years out.
Well, so what's the difference?
What's the difference is, you're adding a year of testing before I can figure out if I can go start testing for shutdown.
The worst you're
criteria.
adding
I'm not-
6 months. The worst
No,
you're adding 6
no,
months.
I'm not, I'm
You're not
not.
adding
Yes, you
anything.
are.
No, I'm not.
You're saying,
Continue
you're saying
doing
I
what you're
cannot,
doing.
I cannot start shutdown criteria testing until I've satisfied your 95% confidence interval over a 1-year period. That's your position.
That the data over a 1-year period defines that 95% confidence limit.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the only time when the data is worth analyzing with average and range.
I just
So
don't
it
agree
makes
on the time.
logical sense to do that.
I don't
If
agree on the time.
And if I could just ask a question, Commissioner Maynard, what you're saying is you could start that, we're 2.5 years out, but you could start that year of data collection tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Or last year.
But I'm not gonna hit
Yes, or
tomorrow.
Or last year, exactly.
Right.
So it is,
You're not missing
so
anything.
what I think the disconnect here is, that there is one, is that you think you start again from day one. He's saying, no, you're from your last time that you were outside of that 95, right?
Yeah,
So
but
are you-
I've got to hit the 95 in order to do the testing, so it makes no sense to do testing when I'm not hitting the 95. Yes, I could start tomorrow, but I know with all logic, I'm not going to hit the 95% interval tomorrow. I'm not going to hit the 95% interval a year from today. So why test? You're getting the data anyway. I'm not testing any new data. It's just giving data to you. But as a precondition to what I get to do next, you're requiring this narrow band for a year.
For a year.
I just think it's too long.
Wait, what, I'm so sorry. When you say, before I get to test,
I mean, shutdown criteria testing.
permanent shutdown?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Because as I understand it, this is a proposed precondition to
Permanent-
shutdown
permanent
criteria
shutdown.
number one.
Permanent
Yes.
shutdown criteria.
That's what we're talking about.
So I have a question. So when do we say we want to permanently shut down the system? What does that scatter graph have to look like? And is it going to just coincide with
So
the 95
theoretically-
percentile anyway?
Theoretically, it's gonna be less scattered, or statistically, it'll be tightened up.
Right.
Where that trend line falls below the 8.3.
And none of them are above 9, is that what I also?
And no individual readings above 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
To me, if you're
But
using a
don't worry about the low
95%
limit.
interval, I still don't understand why, if you have one bad reading, you're thrown out. If
Because
you're using a
still not
95%
working.
interval, they're automatically thrown out. That's the whole idea of the 95% statistical interval. You're throwing out the highs and the lows. So why should I be penalized for a high or a low?
It's just a likelihood.
Well, I think there's a reason.
I don't think you should get both.
I think they both help measure what's
I
going on.
totally agree. My point is, if I have one, I gotta start that year over?
The only one that makes you start over is
No.
probably the 9.
No.
The 9's the
Yeah.
only one that makes you start over, right?
Yeah.
You just,
Not starting over from day one. That's why I simply say that you simply move the day forward and look back 3 years prior data. And the next day, look back the years prior
But how do you
data.
wipe out a 9, I guess? I get it for the
The
95.
Statistically,
the 9 would restart the 30 days. not
Oh,
30
so
days.
30
days.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's my point.
But it does.
Say we
now-
have 20, 30 7.8s in 1.9. Under the 95%, confidence level, we would fit the confidence level. And if we have Paul walking the site and everything's looking great, we have technically met shutdown criteria. But if we have 9.1, we're out.
You restart the 30 days.
We start
Not the
30
full year, just the 30 days.
Just the 30 days.
And that was the original.
That I just think is onerous.
Well, that
If
was
you're
the
using the 95% criteria level, there's a purpose for it, because you want to look at the mean.
But-
The mean has already thrown out highs and lows. It just seems duplicative to have both.
But if I'm understanding correctly, the 95% confidence interval, as Commissioner Maven has modified it to be, is only looking ahead of when you're right. It smooths the data to give you a better understanding. It's like, okay, cool, we're going to be pretty good to start this 30-day. It has no bearing on the actual 30-day test. The 30-day test remains the same
No,
at.
I understand.
So you
I
say,
know, but
are we in agreement that the 30-day test is simply the range, no lower than, no higher than, and again, average being what it is? But if a single exceedance doesn't, it only simply starts that 30-day window over again. You don't have to go all the way back and start all over again
That is
for the
consistent-
year.
That is consistent with the original proposal that was in here, going back to the original development of the plan. That's been carried forward with the adjustment of it from down from 9.5 to 9.
So in that 30-day consideration for permanent shutdown, that test,
Correct.
that next
of
test,
the treatment system.
are we not taking a confidence interval in that 30 days?
We are.
Now I'm hearing different
No,
answers.
no.
I thought we were only taking that to look
well,
at.
I mean,
It's the
We
precondition
don't
for the
have to.
30-day and the
We
60.
can,
Once we get to the
No,
30,
no.
we're looking at strictly ranges and average, right?
In the
so,
30 days, I'm
Yeah.
reading it, the data, no individual reading below 6.5 or 9.0 at the effluent tank at treatment system based on readings every 6 hours for 30 consecutive days. So and using the 95% confidence interval.
That line, and correct me if I'm wrong, commissioners, is being struck.
right,
That is being struck.
right,
Then I'm fine.
right.
That's my
But
whole
we want to be
argument.
clear on that.
What's being,
For-
what's being struck?
So,
Bump it.
one, two,
They don't wait.
third page, paragraph 1.
So to demonstrate
Under-
eligibility,
Monitoring of pH?
Monterey pH,
Yeah.
the one that's highlighted.
Section 2, item 1.
The one that's highlighted, we'd strike.
Do it.
Water quality is considered acceptable when the average pH measurement is 8.3 SU or less. So you're striking with no individual reading below 6.5 or above
No,
9
we-
point.
That's,
Oh,
No,
No, the data should also be evaluated using a 95% confidence. That's what we would strike.
No.
For, during this
Oh,
30
I see.
days,
No.
right?
I thought it was the other way around.
Why are we striking that highlighted area?
Because if we use the 95 percentile before we start this 30-day, why do we have to do it again? Makes
You
no
don't.
sense.
you don't.
Right. Right?
you don't.
I'm fine if it's one or the other. It's, my objection is both. So one or the other
During
works
the
fine for
30.
me. During the 30-day
During
period,
the-
yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's what,
And there's that same sentence is in the 60.
Yes.
Yes, that needs to be struck again. That was a highlighted
So
thing.
we're
Okay.
striking the 95% interval, confidence interval in the 30 and the 60?
yes.
Okay.
But we're adopting the new number 1, which is the 95% confidence level achieved for 12 months.
For eligibility for shutdown.
Yeah.
Where is the new number?
I understand that, and that makes sense.
How much? No, we'll need to get some numbers
I
on
got
these
this.
pages too.
That's email.
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
all right, thank you. I thought I was looking in the draft here. This is being adopted.
As,
I don't know.
well,
I
the
thought I heard that,
proposal,
but
the
I'm not sure.
proposal is to adopt a new number 1 under Section 2, permanent water treatment system, permanent shutdown criteria. So a new number 1 is your eligibility to start the 30 days and the 60 days, which is your 95% for the
prior
12
year.
months or whatever. I mean, collecting that, you're gonna collect it anyway, you can just do math with the data that you have, right?
Yeah, right.
And it's
Smoothing.
smoothing it, and it's not like if you don't hit it, then you have to wait a whole nother year. You just shift that year and you throw out that 13th and start. So it's not like, it's not like this. It's, I'm gonna shift this way and this way and this way.
Well said.
Correct. Commissioner Nathan's exactly right in that it allows you to build confidence in your data set before starting the 30-day. And I do apologize for earlier for not understanding where that plugged in.
Yeah, you just
The
saw
30
it.
days ahead gives you confidence that you're ready to start that 30 days. It's a smoothing of the data.
Makes sense.
So once we've done that, we are then monitoring daily.
Monitoring daily is happening regardless. That is part of the treatment
Correct.
system. It was hourly and then ended up at 3 days, and now we're kind of correcting that to the daily reading.
In the 30 days, are we still doing it at the collection point prior to the treatment tank? Are we moving it to the, we haven't moved to the sumps yet, that's the next step.
That's all part of, that's all
That's
part
the-
of it.
that's the last
Evaluations
step.
of all the
So
shutdown
we're still doing, all
criteria.
right.
Correct.
So we're doing that for 30 days, and that's simply,
That's shutdown criteria.
and that's simply a range. You shall not exceed 9. You shall not drop below 6.3.
6.5.
6.5. And your average in that time should be 8.3.
Correct.
You do that in 30 days, you are now eligible to take the next step,
Correct. That's
which
correct.
is really
which is monitoring of pH and surface water, wetlands assessment for calcite formation and vegetation.
And at that point, we're in permanent shutdown with a 60-day trial period.
This means the system is off, and then also groundwater seepage in the trench itself. Those are the three next conditions I think we have
Yeah.
to.
And it's the same frequency of monitoring, of sampling, and it's the same ranges of data. The limits are gonna be the same.
Correct.
And you're increasing site monitoring to once a week from once a month during the 60-day period. So the one issue I have there is, it's not an issue, it's I guess a request. Instead of probes in all the sumps, we would like it to just be in sump 1, because that's where the original seepage that caused all this occurs. It's our lowest gradient, and it just, we're paying roughly $2,500 a probe. So we're gonna have 4 probes, within throwing a rock of each other. Why can't we just, the goal is to measure water in the interceptor trenches. Sump 1 will do that. That's my request.
Is sump 1, John, the main collection point, or is each sump?
That's the main driver, sump 1. That was the original sump that was put in right in the vicinity of the original breakout that was observed. And that's the lowest invert of the interceptor trench. And that's kind of the pathway towards that nearest wetland. So we feel that that's probably the most down gradient and the lowest point from an invert elevation.
Is water being collected from any other sumps on a standalone basis?
Water is collected from all the sumps.
How many sumps are there in total?
There's 4.
Well, they
Generally,
don't, those sumps do not daisy chain together. They relied on pumping to get it up to the.
Yeah, they're connected by a French drain.
So what
Each
we were
sump-
trying to drive at, so I think our thought was correct, but we may be going about it the wrong way. We wanted to make sure that where each of the seeps were, where the sumps were appropriate to be located to begin with, there was an opportunity that you may get different concentrations of flow, and therefore different levels of pH at each of those separate sumps. That's what we wanted to measure separately. If they were daisy chained together, I would agree that lower sump would be representative, but they're not daisy chained together
All the sumps are tied together, yes.
by pumping, not by
No.
gravity
By the
flow, right?
No, they're
pipe
tied
trench.
together by a French drain. There's a perforated pipe with
Yep.
a stone trench in
Yep.
between each sump. Sump 1 happens to be the lowest, sump 2 is a bit higher, sump 3 is the highest of all, and then sump 4 drops down again. But sump 1 is the lowest sump on that daisy chain, if you will. And the majority of the pumping from this trench comes from sump 1 and sump 2. Sump 3 periodically runs because it's higher in invert, and then sump 4 periodically runs too, because not that much flow is over on this end. It's mostly where 1 and 2 are, primarily 1.
So
So maybe we could have sumps
I
1 and 2.
think our thought process is appropriate, but I don't have enough data. So maybe over some reasonable period of time, maybe that 60-day window, we want each of the 4 sumps monitored. And if we see a correlation, if they're giving us similar readings, we can then go to that first lowest sump.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the readings. I'm worried about the $7,500 it's gonna cost me to probe sumps that you may later determine you have no need for.
We do Ecotech to do that?
No, John's gonna do it.
Oh, okay, whoever.
Do the,
Or just a
Do all-
physical
do
walk
all
down
4
there
sumps
and.
pump to the same
We
place?
could do that too at a cheaper
They
level,
do now.
but we
They
want
do now.
them picked up through the monitoring panel. That's why
Oh.
we have them wired to the
Okay.
monitoring panel.
I think
So-
I think I know where you're going. If they're all pumping to the headworks to the treatment facility, and it's simply all we're doing is putting it through treatment and adding acid to it to change the pH before it discharges out the other end, would we not get the same effect to keep the pumps and the sumps together and continue monitoring at that influent point to the treatment facility? Because that would, in fact, average all 4 of those, and we could then
Yeah,
say,
We're doing that in
They
the
do that right
30-day
now.
period to begin with. That's our measuring.
but we're not
point of
treating
it.
anymore, we just simply
Yeah,
pumping it up there and just
We
letting it flow
we
through
will
the
already
tank.
have had a
And letting it through
pump
the-
probe there, so I'm all for that.
So for the permanent
solution without treatment, do the 4 sumps get combined or not?
I think that's Commissioner Lynch's point. They all flow to this central point right before the influent tank. And that's where we have a probe now, because we're going to increase your pH readings to daily.
Okay,
I have no
so,
problem if that's where we're gonna measure for the 60-day window. Even though we're dumping it into the tank, we're not treating it.
We're not
It's
treating.
essentially still mimicking shutdown, and we're measuring the pH rather than doing it each of the.
okay, that's during the 60-day period, but after the say if the 60-day period is successful, do these flows, do all these sumps still get combined
That's what I
before
was gonna
discharge?
ask, exactly, otherwise you gotta keep them separate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for instance,
After
it's
60
watering
days,
down,
you'd
it's
be-
watering
you'd be
down
at permanent
sump
shutdown
one.
criteria.
If there's a bad one.
Right, if
And
sump
the
one-
other
if it's
might
all
rate
coming
great.
from here and you put them all together, you're watering down the
They wouldn't be
bad one.
working.
I know, but would the sumps get combined? Would the water in the sumps get combined in the permanent solution after treatment is done?
I think as natural flow through the interceptor trenches, yes. But not by sumps, just natural gravity flow.
Right?
Because if we're shutting the system off completely to monitor what the effect or the potential effect in the wetland, if any, is occurring, you're maintaining the natural groundwater flow pattern below the site. If the pumps are running during that condition, you're modifying the groundwater flow. You're causing groundwater, you're drawing it into the sumps. So it's not technically an effective shutdown if the
Right.
pumps are running. You have to shut everything
Right.
off, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You have to.
The original intent of each sump was to try to identify as applicable if hotspot areas at a sump location still existed, because you are getting, if you were focusing on one sump, in my opinion, then you're still getting, you still have that same influent
Yeah,
concentration you
which is all
have
of them.
coming into the system.
So short of monitoring pH in each of the 4 sumps, we're not going to get a representative concentration of each individual spot. We're only going to get the aggregation
Aggregate.
of the one that we are in fact sampling,
Correct.
which may have been a hotspot that the other ones are diluting.
Correct.
That would be sump 1. Or the influent tank. If you want an aggregate position, sump 1's collecting the most, the aggregate position would be right before the influent tank.
Is sump one collected the most for that long period of time you've been looking at it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
The
the
first
primary
one.
driver.
It was the first one that went in all by itself. The others were added sequentially over time, right?
Right, it started with sump 1, and then we said, how can we enhance it? Let's do an interceptor trench. So we connected a trench to sump 1, and then we continued that trench along the whole base of that retaining wall, added additional sumps as we went, so.
I think you said, how do we enhance it? I think the reality is we had breakouts in other parts of the area, and we had to capture it, right? There were other areas where it was breaking out of the wall separately. We needed to get it all down to that one area. Isn't that how it evolved?
I don't remember if there was discrete breakouts, but I do know to prevent potential breakouts. We just wanted to make sure if we could run it along that whole wall, that would be the thing to do, so.
Is there a time where water was coming out of the parking lot?
Corner of the building.
Yeah, the corner of the building, yep.
Yeah,
Different,
that's
different
been
problem. That was a different
addressed by
situation.
a French drain
Yeah,
to a
that's-
storm,
yeah.
to a catch basin. That's a condition here as well.
My suggestion would still be I understand the expense, and maybe there's ways to offset it, but to look at each individual sump, even if the data that comes back is that sump is dry, is an important thing for monitoring groundwater seeps, in my opinion, along the length of the wall. Otherwise, you're just getting an aggregate reading, which is the same thing during the 30-day period you're getting at the system anyway.
Yep. Yeah, I do too. And I recognize there's a cost associated with that, I do. But I think the data we get out of it gives us the ability to be confident that the decision to ultimately shut it down has been made properly. I'm reluctant to ask the question. The probe cost, is that just the purchase of probes, or is that a lump sum, or is that a monthly fee?
According to John, that's the fee to purchase the probe, run all the wiring back up into the monitoring system and sync up the monitoring system. If we wanted to do a probe that just would have a digital read and one of our workers or John's guys could come back, it's every 6 hours as the requirement of the read, we could read it that way too.
But that cost for the probe, to get it and wire it up.
It's $2,500.
Each? And that's a
Yes.
one-time cost?
Yes,
And there's 4 of them?
yes.
Well,
Plus-
there's
plus the
three
in-
additional. One was gonna be done anyway.
Right.
Plus the probe we're putting now in the influent tank. So it's $10,000 worth of probes.
These are single-purpose probes, simply pH. They're not picking, I mean, probes have a range of data that they can collect. And it seems like for $2,500, that sounds like a pretty universal, multi-purpose probe.
Right.
Yeah.
It's basically consistent with the probes that we're using now.
Yeah, so you're gonna have reuse for those when this project's over. So I mean, I think this discussion is probably between you and your client. And I think there's other ways to get that same data and do it more economically, but I don't think that's our issue. I think we need the data.
But also, I mean, if this is gonna go on for 3 years, and you're talking about a cost of $7,500 over that 3-year period, I'm not saying $7,500 isn't a lot to a big company like yours, but it's not a lot to a big company like yours.
So jumping ahead a bit to Mr. Lynch's point, in the sump, you had asked us, we're going to put a float alarm device, and you asked us to then sync that to a cell phone, that if we had a system shutdown or overflow, we are going to do that as well. So I haven't given those revisions to Amy on paragraph 70, but we agreed to 3 things. 360-gallon acid tank. We're going to do the pH, we're going to do the float with a phone alert to LRT, and then we're going to put the probe in the influent tank. So that's what we're going to do right away. I think there were others on that contract list that I think we agreed.
I'm sorry, that was to address an earlier concern where there was a malfunction in
Yep.
communication. That was just a way to work around that.
Yeah, and I think we agreed, setting off red lights and
Yeah.
alarms was disturbing to the neighborhood, so this is just a more efficient way to do it. So I think that's all we have.
The other
on
thing we
chief.
talked about is during shutdown, we would keep the tank, keep the system in place, ready to go should it be needed, but not keep acid in it. That should the condition change during monitoring, that you need to start treatment back up, you have the ability to get hydrochloric acid delivered. But you want to
I
keep the
think
tank
we
empty.
agree. I did talk to John about the safety issue of having acid there and when we're in shutdown and not using it, and I think John's answer was similar to yours, which is to remove the acid, but obviously everything is staying in place. It's staying in place even post-shutdown criteria. Everything is staying in place, including the well point system. So it's not going away, and you get to reevaluate it as it goes along. We have a 2-year post-shutdown criteria monitoring period.
The window is closing, for tonight and the long run on the, get this
I believe-
decision out. Is
I
it
believe,
tonight?
If I'm not mistaken, we've got to close this tonight, and then we've got to draft and issue our order of conditions. I don't
Well,
think,
if we can't get together,
Yeah, I'm saying, I'm not good in April.
no, this has to,
it expires April 19th.
okay, so
It's tonight.
I
it's
don't
tonight.
know.
We got to close it, and we got to draft and get our order of conditions done. We have to do it tonight.
Because we probably can't get together again
Very
before
Very
the
unlikely.
19th.
Well, when would you,
Oh, I know, I'm just saying, I don't know what everyone's schedule
We have to
looks
close
like.
it, deliberate, make it, issue our order, and then have
First
Amy
of all,
type
there was
it
a
up
lot
and
of
come back and
discussion.
sign it.
There was a lot of discussion tonight, and there's gonna be some changes in the language on the order of conditions based on discussion we had here tonight. There's never gonna be a consensus. Attorney Brown's never always gonna agree with us, and we're not always gonna agree with him. We're just gonna have to, but we're responsible for drafting the order of conditions.
So I think the other most critical point that Amy and I and Mike and John spent a lot of time on is the whole issue of the performance bond. And I redrafted that in a sense and added what I call the escrow release procedure. So to get to the heart of it, our current operating budget is $43,170. So the commission is currently holding $30,000 that was set aside for completion of the project, which I guess technically we could request back right now. The project is completed. Maybe we disagree. Our position is we leave the $30,000 in there. We add another $13,170 in cash to give you cash of 1 year's worth of budgeted operating expenses for the cash reserve. The second item is a performance bond, and Mr. Manzi was quite clear that he didn't like surety bonds, and we took that to heart.
Thank you.
My client wasn't very happy about posting a sizable amount of money in a cash account that earns 0.3% interest. So we came up with what is hopeful and acceptable compromise. We've negotiated with Bank of America to issue to the town a letter of credit in the amount of $250,000 that guarantees the bank's payment of $250,000, which represents about 4.5 years of additional operating expenses in the event that we do not cooperate and operate the system. And the conditions on how we cooperate and how you jump in and take over the system with notice and everything like that is set forth in my draft escrow release procedure. So that's there's also a third provision that we fund a 53G account. The original draft was that we give $5,000 now, and then we supplement with increments of $5,000. After our meeting a few weeks ago, we funded that with $5,000, so I'm not sure we need to immediately fund it, but we have no problem continuing to fund the 53G account.
Your operating budget is a hard money number.
To be clearer, the last time I was before you, I presented a budget, it was roughly $62,000. And you asked me, is this for the groundwater treatment system? When I went back and talked to my people, they said, no, that includes stormwater management, cleaning, street sweeping, and all that other stuff that has nothing to do with the groundwater treatment system. So this is purely a budget for the groundwater treatment system. Chemicals, LRT's time, Ecotech's time, acids, everything, soup to nuts.
We believe that number is going to stay the same for the next 5 or 6 years?
It'll actually decrease because we're reducing Paul McManus's trips to the site to once a month, and currently they're budgeted at twice a month.
So I guess the $250,000 figure is just $250,000 less than I had in mind. I started at $1 million. I've come a long way. Realistically, I'm not trying to be a wise guy. Please, I know I'm not very funny.
My point is this.
I've seen too many of these projects.
We have a 3.5-year timeline projected.
Yeah.
Projected.
Yeah.
And every escrow that I've ever done as involved in construction for 20 some odd years, you do 1.5 times the value. So what we're giving you is 1.5 times the value of the contracts, or the contract spread over 1.5 times 3.5 years. So we're giving you greater than the amount due as projected by another 2 years.
So what is a letter of credit?
A letter of credit is a guarantee by the bank, not LaSalle. It's a guarantee by Bank of America that they will pay the town of North Andover or the commission, however you decide. As I drafted it, I gave us 60 days to work with town council to figure out the minutia of this language. But it's a guarantee they will pay you, not LaSalle. They will pay you. How they collect money from LaSalle is between the bank and LaSalle, so.
Pay us for what?
Yeah, what's the trigger
What's
mechanism?
the trigger?
Triggering events are set forth in here. Essentially, we have a system failure, or we have an environmental problem. Mike has drafted in his monitoring schedule 4 triggering events: system failure, environmental monitoring, presence of calcite. So those would all be the triggering events in which you would notify us that, hey, we got a problem. We then would have 72 hours to fix the problem. And I said, you know, we may need to have a little bit additional time. Say there's a piece of equipment that is on back order that we're ordering, or we have some scientist that is beyond the scope of what John and Mike and Paul McManus can do. But generally, it's 72 hours. At that point, you give us 24 hours notice that you're going to go in and access the escrow, and you go in and access the escrow. I've drafted it that you access the cash escrow first, and then the letter of credit.
So we notify you 24 hours before we access it. How do we access it? We just go to the bank and say, hey, give us the money?
Yeah.
And they do
No,
it?
no. The town will be holding a letter of credit from the bank. Yes, the
Yep.
town will go to
Present
Bank of
the letter of
America and
credit,
say,
yep.
you know, not 250 right away, you know,
No,
this
right.
year, this month I need $37,000. They normally do it on a requisition basis.
But that's only if you're not taking care of
Right.
business.
And the last thing that I drafted is, even if we're not taking care of it, you guys jump in and you're starting to run it. I said, notwithstanding the commission's assumption of operations and maintenance and use of the escrow monies to fund per section 3, upon 24 hours advance notice, the owner shall have the right to resume operation and maintenance of the system. So we can jump back in at some point. I think the reality is,
If we called you a letter of credit and we've taken responsibility, why would you ever jump back in? What if we just took on a?
Because
what if we
we're not
just-
taking the whole thing. He said we take 30.
little bit at a
and then-
time.
Right. But,
I think the real issue is, you know, we have 193 apartments at Princeton, North Andover that rented out faster than, we have 45 sites throughout New England, rented out faster than any property we've ever owned, have the highest net rental value of any property that we own. The notion that LaSalle is walking away
You're not
from
gonna
this
throw
thing.
this.
I can't think of a rationale. It's a home run.
I don't disagree with you. However, I've seen, just when I think I've seen it all, something new comes up. And I think that you can't really, is it likely? Not likely. But it's possible. And that's where we deal with the possibilities. We have to protect the town's interests in the unlikely event. That's our charge. It doesn't mean, to me personally, it doesn't mean a thing. I'm not gonna be living down there.
I completely agree with your responsibility, and maybe I don't agree, but I recognize your hesitancy to do this in a performance bond surety mechanism that we typically do through insurance-based products. So I understand that. I may not agree with it, but I understand it. So I tried to come up with a more cash-ready mechanism. So that's when we negotiated with Bank of America. LaSalle is one of the biggest multifamily owners in the nation, and Bank of America said, we will issue a letter of credit with cash that we pay, regardless of whether LaSalle goes down the tubes. We pay it, not LaSalle. And so I just felt it was a more accessible mechanism for you than the surety bond mechanism. I understand you may disagree with the amount. That's, as you say, I'm not going to agree with everything that you say, but I thought we created a more efficient mechanism for you.
Okay.
now, one thing that jumps out to me is if we went to present our letter to credit after we gave you those 24 hours notice, you could certainly run to court with an injunction to prevent us from getting that letter of credit. And then all of a sudden, town council's here, and if we had the $250,000, we would have had it in our coffers the entire time. But this way, there's an opportunity to dispute that letter of credit, that trigger mechanism has come due, and you can go get that letter of credit. So you file an injunctive relief with the court,
Well,
and it stalls
the
it.
trigger mechanism is also not only governing the letter of credit, it's governing a whole bunch of things
Yep.
through Mike's, when we have to shut down the system, when we have to restart, things of that nature. So it's a global triggering mechanism. I didn't even think of the chance we'd file some injunction and dispute it. I mean, it sounds like if we're not going to do repairs, which is incredibly unlikely, I don't think we're going to be around to dispute things. It's just a guess. I can't think of a reason in the world we wouldn't be paying for this stuff. There's too much value in that land at those rental rates. It's incredible.
Currently,
So let me focus
So
on.
the rental market is.
Let me focus on the cash bond piece of it
Yep.
first. So you've estimated annually it's $43,170, and that we also know that looking at the trending, we're looking at 2.5, 3.5 years. We don't know, but somewhere down that road. So we're not looking at the 1 year. So on your escrow release procedure, is it triggered by only the time when you're ready to do your shutdown? If it takes
No.
you 3 or 4 more years?
No, at any time. At any time there's a system failure or an environmental
No,
failure.
I'm talking about the 43,170, which covers, which secures the monitoring.
It's accessible at any time. If there's a system failure, an environmental outbreak, or calcite formation, you give us 24 hours notice. We have 72 hours to fix it, could be next week. And then if we don't fix it, you go get your cash.
and that's where I see the disputes coming in. We fixed it. No, you didn't. Bring in the letter of credit, file
Well-
an injunction. That's how I see. I mean, I don't see anybody walking away, but I see disputes like that
If you want to
every
add
day.
that we rectified it
Literally.
to the satisfaction of perhaps Mike, or like you did in the other case, you have a professional out there that verifies we fixed it. I mean, if we have breakout into the wetland area, we're overflowing the trenches.
My question
gonna
was
stop
more,
it.
my question was more basic. The 43,170 was based on a calculation of what it cost to monitor the system for 1 year.
Service it.
And operate it.
Operate,
operate.
right, operate.
Operate it, monitor it.
Maintenance.
And we're talking about that it's likely is gonna be more than 1 year, almost certainly more than 1 year. It's likely it's gonna be 2.5, 3 or 3.5 years.
That's where the.
You're not gonna ask for release of that money in the year 1 because they spent that money doing it. It stays with us until permanent shutdown, correct?
He's gonna ask for the cash we have back. That we have, what do we have, 30,000?
30,000.
But not in year 1.
So they're gonna ask, well, they're ready to ask for it, I heard him say it. You said that you're just about ready to go for that.
No.
No, he's
No,
actually
no, no, no.
converting $30,000
Over to you.
towards this.
So
He's-
we get the
he was just
30,000
saying-
plus the line of credit.
Yeah.
But we
You get
don't-
the
we don't actually get anything.
$30,000 plus $17,000,
13,170.
13,170.
Yep.
To equal 1 year's worth of budget. Then you get 250,000, which is roughly 4.5 years of budget. So you're getting 5.5 years of budget on a 3.5-year timeline. That's what I meant, where it's escrowed at 1.5.
So my point is, we're holding cash, 43,170, we will be.
Yes.
After 1 year of running the system, you're not ready to shut down yet, your data isn't there yet. You're not gonna ask for a bond reduction of
No.
43,170.
Well, they're not gonna get
Yeah, I
it.
was gonna say, it doesn't matter what people.
I've
But I
added,
haven't read the escrow release procedure yet. I'm not sure if it's, how it's
I
threaded
Oh,
have-
out
no,
there.
this is,
I added some language, and I'll ship it to Amy so you can all look at it. And at the end of every one, it says, if we meet shutdown criteria, then the cash is released. So we don't get our cash back until we've satisfied everything that you guys have asked us to satisfy.
That was the answer to the question I was asking.
I understand what's being presented here, and I understand what a letter of credit is. I'm just concerned, I just hate to say it, I just don't think it's enough. Because too much can change. The 43,170 annual costs might go down or it might go up. And I'm
Well,
I'm always concerned.
Based on this language, it will go down because currently we have We have Paul McManus out there twice a week. We are now putting in a 360-gallon acid tank, so that's less trip for LRT and John's group to be on site. So those costs, by just the added equipment and the reduction in monitoring, without a doubt are going to go down. Will they go up a year from now? I mean,
All right,
depends
so-
on the vendors.
So that's something we have to consider.
Yep.
We have to consider that document and the information, and we have to consider the work that Joe and Jack have done, and Mike, and we have to come up with a document. So,
And he's talking about submitting things.
submitting what?
I've already drafted them. Amy and I swapped around these drafts
Yeah.
late this afternoon. I just noticed some typos, and I added the language at the end of the escrow agreements that when we hit shutdown criteria, the cash is released. When we hit shutdown criteria, the letter of credit is released. So that's all I really added.
Is that?
No, that's
to
not
be-
before you.
Is that to be attached to this document, or this is the system operation budget and performance bond?
I have drafted, the revisions that I drafted to paragraph 56 of the order of conditions that have to do with escrows relates back to this escrow release procedure.
Okay, so,
So we can't close an issue tonight. He's gonna be adding things.
you plan to submit additional documents?
I plan to
wants to
submit
tweak it.
some small corrections on some typos, which I can hand to Amy right now.
Okay. We have the,
Well,
we have the document, we just don't have the edits.
They're right here.
so I have to.
Oh, you've
find
already
out-
printed them?
I've already, they're
You made the,
handwritten.
you made the changes?
Yes, I made the change.
Okay.
I need to know what the commission favors here.
Same with this.
We have to close an issue, we have a date of April, what's our dead date?
14th.
19th.
We have one more meeting, but you're not here.
I'm not,
Beginning of April?
April 12th. Wednesday, April 12th.
Hold on.
I will not be here. I won't be here on April 12th. I'll be in Tennessee.
I mean, I'm available anytime except the 5th. I'm available next week, the 29th, or the 12th, or any other date that feel we need to do. Do we need to have a special meeting on this? If we do, let's call it and do it.
And this, so,
It's 20 past 10,
Yeah. it's-
we could be here for a while, or we could do it. I'll do whatever the commission, I'll work however you want to work.
I think if we've got an opportunity to get four of us together next week, let's convene a special meeting for that purpose.
Yep. All right, so
Could we
next
not-
week,
Well, yeah, next week isn't good for me, but April, first week of April, I'm wide
But
open.
you're not good the whole first week in April, right?
no, I mean, I don't, so this isn't my full calendar, I'm still a paper calendar guy.
Yeah.
So I'll have to go back and check exactly what I got going on. But the first week of April is not looking too bad.
I can tell you I'm not around that week. April 2nd through 7th. I get everything except those dates. I can meet later on this week, next week.
I can meet later on this week. Tomorrow and Friday I can meet, but not next week at all. I'm away.
I can't meet Friday, I can meet tomorrow.
Okay.
What about you?
I don't know if I can do tomorrow. I have a medical procedure tomorrow.
Okay,
So this is a meeting for you all to work on the final draft, or?
Yeah,
We have public
No,
session.
it
Well,
would be
I
in
will be here.
we would close the
we would
hearing
close,
tonight.
we would close, and then we would deliberate.
Deliberate.
So we
Actually,
close
need
tonight?
Posting, can we do it in less than 24 hours if it's continuous?
We can close tonight if we want to, and deliberate on the document if we want to.
I'm just trying to figure out, I'm away, I'm gonna be away for a bit. So I'm around the first part of next week, but that doesn't sound like you need me.
You wouldn't be allowed to speak
Right.
officially.
Right.
Yeah,
But I'll see a final draft once, I mean, we had a lot that we put in tonight.
Yeah,
We
they
have the
have-
12-month issue.
So that's my point, that there's a lot of changes that have to be incorporated into
Yeah.
what'll be the
Yeah.
final draft document, and then we have to take it item by item and approve it, which could take a couple hours.
Understood.
I think I'm being conservative if I say 2 hours.
I'm available Monday and Tuesday
So
after
what do we say, the date, the last date for this is the 19th?
Yeah,
So
which is Wednesday.
So you said you look at it next week, Jack?
No,
No.
No.
the
Next week
10th
I'm
or
is out.
11th
Is out. But you're
Yeah,
right.
10th or 11th of April.
10th or 11th?
is a possibility.
Can do 10, 11, 12, 13, 14,
I might-
17, 18.
I might be able to do the 10th. I'll be gone 11, 12, 13, 14.
Let's try for the 10th.
10th is good for me.
All right, we're gonna shoot for the 10th, April
Okay.
10th.
And I know you said 2 hours, Al, but maybe if we all study that, you know, if we get that draft can we get the draft document before we come to the meeting?
Of course.
Yes, we
Okay, yeah.
can.
There's
Yeah.
I'm gonna defend you on this right now, Amy. There's a lot of stuff that was bounced around here that hopefully Amy caught it all.
Yeah.
But if she didn't catch something he said or something he said or something,
Right.
we're gonna end up amending and modifying.
Yep.
So,
Is it helpful to have the track changes turned on, or turn them off for that review copy? I don't think we really, all the iterations back and
I would
forth,
agree.
I don't think we
We
want
want to
to.
see a final version.
That's
wanna
why
see
I
a final
put,
version.
the critical paragraphs are paragraph 56 through 68, so that's why I put them on a separate set of pages rather than multiple track
I think I'd rather
changes.
see a final,
Me too.
document too, and, you know, get it well enough in advance so that I can read it, and I have time to call Mike or Jack, or one of you on the phone, and just ask a question.
Yep.
What?
Not by way of deliberation, just,
Not by way of
for-
deliberation.
just for clarification.
Ask me, and I will ask them. How's
If
that?
if we haven't closed yet, and if you've just sent me a draft,
Yeah,
yeah, I
and
can,
you can sit and mull it over.
Yeah.
If you have questions, relay them to me.
okay, got it. So,
I think with the special meeting law, you just can't sit with less than a quorum
Right.
and work on it.
Yeah.
okay. I hear you. All right, so we're looking at April 10,
Yep.
everybody?
Thank you.
So I'm not gonna close, I'm staying open?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not closing?
So motion continue to April 10th, for a special meeting for this purpose of hearing this.
Okay, motion and a second.
And we aren't closing because why?
That's what I'm asking.
Why aren't we closing?
21 days, we can't issue within 21 days.
And it-
April 10th
Right.
is beyond 21 days.
April 10th is fine. How is that?
Well, it gets,
Today's the
it
22nd,
gets
it's
too,
not beyond 21 days.
Today's the
Yeah, today's
22nd.
22nd. Why can't we close
Well-
tonight and
well, well, just,
It's
how
18
about we
days,
just,
it's
we
18
Yeah, we
just
could, yeah,
close on
we
the
could.
10th and issue on the
Yeah.
10th.
19
There's
days.
just,
Thinking the 19th is more.
because,
No, it is.
So provided that on the 10th, we don't have to make a lot of revisions and to the document, we could close an issue on that day. If it's gonna require a lot of revisions,
right,
just
that's,
sunk.
or intake,
We've made revisions
Because I've-
during deliberations on a lot of conditions. We've written them from the table
Oh, yeah,
before.
of course we can.
so
You
I,
can close
I
and
know,
do that
but-
on the 10th.
Yeah,
Why couldn't we just make a request to extend the order conditions, and then you have the time to do it? We
because-
did that before.
well, it's because.
You're beyond, the
No,
holdings
already-
run out, right?
We're not.
It's already been extended twice regularly, and the April 19th is the COVID extension, so it's sort of like maxed out.
From COVID. I'm just saying, just separate it. We will make a
We have-
request
we have
to,
a- We have a requirement that you can't extend an order of conditions
Right.
Oh.
more than twice.
Yeah,
You
one
can
year at a
extend
time.
2 3-year extensions, not more than 2 on any project.
so the first one was 2018
1 year.
Two.
2000.
Two, 1 year at a
2
time.
1-year extensions.
Okay.
I
understand.
I thought it could go for a total of 5 years.
We have
That's
to waive
right.
that. We have to waive that part of our bylaw. Our bylaw is what
No,
only
the-
is what requires the
The
one.
original order is 3 years, then you get your
And
2
then you-
extensions for 5 years total.
So is that where we're at?
so April
No.
No,
19th
but
is
beyond
5
that,
years.
but it's because COVID kicked in and the clock
Gave us a
froze.
little
But that's,
So even though the calendar slid,
that's only the first extension. We got this in 2018, so 3 years would have been 2021. So that extension via COVID is what's bringing us to 23, April 19th. We haven't requested a second extension.
What's it, is it 3-1 and 1? Or 3-2 and 1?
I thought I heard 3, 2, and 2.
It's three, it's
3, 1, and 1.
It's 3, 1, and 1.
Which brings you to now.
I'm just saying, we haven't used that second request for an extension.
Because
If it gives you guys
Because COVID told everything.
told everything, and if it gives you time, we're willing to just request an extension of the order of conditions.
If we can legally extend it, that would be the best situation. Can we legally extend it?
Yeah, it's that deadline that held our feet to the fire here.
Yeah. I don't know what, in the chronology that Amy put together, you'll see we requested an extension. She has it listed in there at one point, and so that's what's gotten us to this period via COVID. So we still have one extension left, as I read the bylaw.
Got more than a year.
What's that?
He's got more than a year, he's saying.
Okay, I want to believe him.
Yeah, I know, I agree with you. We need proof. Right, I agree.
I'm just trying to make it easier.
Listen,
you
I-
all need to do what you need to do.
I appreciate it, because, you know,
At 10:30 at night, you can use something easy.
All right, so
what's this, Jack?
extension request.
That's his proposed change.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Okay,
Right,
first,
I got it.
first extension request made December 5th, 2019.
February?
December.
December.
So in
So that-
2019, so that's 20, 21, 22. You go up to December 20 of 22. So he's got,
That extension would have ended in 2001, but the COVID tolling
Yeah.
brings us to 4/19. So that's our first extension. We're still in our first extension.
And that was in December of 19.
If that's what Amy said, right?
That's what
Yes.
that's what I'm seeing, there's a
Yes.
screen in
Okay.
front of you.
Yep,
I think he's got another year.
So they should be good
All right.
until December
so
of
now
23.
we have extension request 2020. That was made in December 7th, 2020. So we were in COVID emergency at that time.
Mhm. Yeah, it was March of 2020 is the COVID emergency.
That was when it started, yeah.
and how long was that extension?
2 years.
A year.
It just,
No,
I thought it was
Oh, no, more
COVID
than
by
that.
law
Yeah.
told the expiration of all permits.
Right.
I think it's 475 days.
Something like that,
Something
yeah.
like that,
That long?
yeah. So whether it was a special permit, this type of permit, any town issued permit.
And extended statute of limitations, 106.
So
All right, so
Are we-
1,
can we legally
12,
extend them till
22.
December of 23?
hold on, let me try to
I
find
believe
that.
so.
If we can do it, we ought to, and then still work as diligently
so
as
let's
we
not do
can.
that tonight. Let's continue this meeting till April 10th for a
Okay,
special meeting, at which point we'll know what it is we can do. If we have to do a 2-hour marathon and just get through and hammer it out, close it and do it the same night, we'll do it.
okay.
If we can extend it, that's when we should.
Yeah, yeah. If we find out, if we confirm we can extend it, we don't go forward with the April 10th meeting, or maybe we do. We'll
Is that-
cross that bridge when we
Is
get
that
there.
fair enough? You okay with that?
I'm fine with it, I'm still a little bit lost. If you're keeping the meeting open, then it's a public hearing, then I need to be here, and I will be in Florida. If I can join in by phone, I'm fine. I'm just taking my wife after what she's been through down in Florida.
Yep.
So that's my only hindrance.
You're talking about the 10th meeting, the meeting
Yeah.
on the 10th?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so,
it sounds like I'm not gonna be able to make that much input, because I've turned in everything that I want you to review.
I'm not sure what you can contribute.
Right.
so,
Other
Prior
than
to
rebuttal.
contributing.
so I guess that's a valid point. Anything you need to submit between now and then, you can. And then we don't take any testimony when we're deliberating anyway.
Well, I think that's after you close, and you won't close until the end of the 10th. That's what, I think I understand your procedure.
Well, not the end of the 10th. We could close first minute of the meeting and just
Oh.
deliberate for the next 2 hours,
Which is likely what we'll do.
which is pretty much our
Okay.
plan.
because there's not going to be anything else
We're not
on
gonna
there.
hear
Because we
It's
can't.
a
If I-
special
if-
meeting.
If I can just listen in until you say we're closed, then
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
Can we accommodate that?
Yep,
We can do that.
So we're gonna continue to the 10th, and in the meanwhile, we're gonna investigate to see how long we can extend it if we need to, Amy?
do that right now, yep.
We don't have to know that tonight, but we'd like to, or do you wanna answer it by tonight?
I think, yeah, it is, I'm doing both dates. So first extension extended the permit to January 12th, 2021.
And that was a 3-year extension,
1 year,
the first, or that was a 1-year extension.
yeah.
But that
It's only-
extension,
We only have
We
one year.
issued
but
in
during that time,
2018.
the COVID protocol kicked into place. So sometime before that, the clock froze,
Yeah, COVID.
which was March of 20?
Yeah.
March of 20. So right after we did that extension,
March of 20.
COVID kicked in, the clock froze, even though the extension was to the 21st, it slid for 475 days. At which point, that 21st, 2021 date would have expired that later date after COVID.
Right.
What,
It's
8 months ago, 9 months
475
ago?
days from its natural extension date.
So that's still the first extension, which has now been extended through COVID, which means at this point, what's expiring is that new extension.
Right.
Through Amy, I understood it to be the extension extended via the 475
Right.
days of COVID, but I may be wrong. I don't know.
But there is not a second extension.
There is. We extended it twice, and once during COVID.
We have to look at the timetable on that.
So.
I guess you could say the COVID extension really wasn't necessary because the tolling was already occurring during
Right.
during the COVID period. We didn't need an extension.
Right. So so the first extension gave extra life to January 12th, 2021. And if I plug in, I have this,
That's the first extension.
right, and so if I plug in that date to this table that I have up, the new expiration of the permit would have been 4/19/2022. And then if I punch in the second extension, which is 1/12/2022. 1/12/2022. So let me do that. We get 4/19/23.
Including the COVID.
Yeah.
Okay, so we better work hard on the 10th.
Okay.
There'll be no screwing around.
Well, once again, I thank you all for your time. I know this is an arduous task. Amy and Mike have been great. We've
All right, so
done
this,
a lot of work.
this meeting stands continued.
Well, I'll move it. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
10.
Aye.
Opposed, that's unanimous.
All right.
Next motion.
Motion to adjourn. Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
None?
We stand adjourned, Mr. Producer.